Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of 2024, this Tuesday, January the 2nd. At this time, I'd like to ask the Reverend Spotswood Graves if he would come forward for an invocation. Good morning, Reverend.
Good morning. Good morning, commissioners and guests. Let us pray. Lord God, King of the universe, for whom 1,000 years are but a day, who names the stars, whose compassion knows each of us better than we know ourselves, whose will encompasses hope and healing to all of creation. We pause at the beginning of this new year to take stock. We remember with sorrow all that is wrong. We pray for your mercy that leads us forward with new determination to do better. Thank you for delivering us to this new day. Thank you for everyone who has helped us to get to this place. Thank you for persons true to the trust we have placed in them, for companions in our struggles and challenges that will call forth cries for your help and guidance. Thank you for our form of government, that we have the opportunity to take part in choosing our leaders and in making community decisions. We pray for all who are hurting this day, for parents with children in distress, for prisoners trapped in destructive behavior, for aged persons losing mental faculties and bodily vigor, for people trying to survive in abuse, crime, and war, for our neighbors, families, and fellow residents with their daily challenges. We pray for our country, that we will listen to each other and understand our mutual need to live up to the ideals of liberty and justice for all. And we pray for ourselves, that each of us becomes the best we can be, that we know wisdom born of life well lived, that we know patience with others and impatience with injustices. Make us each one to be an instrument of your peace. This is our prayer, O God. Amen.
Amen. May we stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I'd like to add an item to the agenda, amend the agenda, and add item 4A, a resolution concerning HB 259. Do I hear a motion to do so?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by the Vice Chairman and Commissioner Couch. It's been seconded by Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. County Manager?
Good morning, Happy New Year, Mr. Chairman. Item 1 on the agenda is the chairman's opening remarks.
Thank you, County Manager. I just have a couple of brief chairman's comments this morning. Just would like to remind everyone here today and who's watching live and listening that the state of the county will be held on January the 23rd. It'll be held at Captain George's Restaurant, and it will be from 8 a.m. to noon. If you haven't registered, we'd certainly, I believe, Ms. Hester, we still have a few. So if you haven't registered, please get it in now, because we sell out pretty fast. So once again, January 23rd at Captain George's. I'd also like to remind everyone that the 33rd annual Martin Luther King celebration will take place on Saturday, January the 13th. It will start at 11 a.m. and this year it will be at the First Flight High School auditorium. And if you haven't heard these folks, you need to come to this, because the program will be a musical concert by the Elizabeth City State University Concert Choir. And if you haven't heard them, man, you are missing a golden opportunity, because they are a phenomenal choir. So,
if I may echo that, this choir was in town. Free concert at St. Andrews by the Sea in Nags Head, where they sang Handel's Messiah. Hard to overstate how wonderful these singers are. So just wanted to echo those comments.
thank you, Commissioner Ross. Please put that on your calendar. You will really want to attend that. And then the third item I have, I want to wish everyone that's with us today, and once again, who's online and listening to our board meeting, a Happy New Year. 2024, I hope will be really good to you. I wish you the very best in this coming year, and we look forward to, as a board, once again, helping our citizens and doing what's in the best interest of the citizens of Dare County. So with that being said, County Manager, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, sir. Item 2 on the agenda is our service pin. We have one this morning, and it's Allison Woodard would come forward to get her 15-year pin from Beth Bradley.
Just one today. It's a very special day for myself, because this is my daughter-in-law. 15 years. But let me set the record straight. She was employed with Dare County way before I became chairman of the Dare County Board of Commissioners, because I know how some of these folks out there think. I want to make that very clear. She was employed 3 years before I ever became part of this board. So very proud of her, though. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Beth Bradley, and I'm the Adult Services Supervisor for the Department of Health and Human Services. It's my pleasure to stop by today to express my gratitude and appreciation for Allison Woodard. Some of you may know her. Allison receives her 15-year pin today, and I'm so proud to have had the chance to work with Allison. She spent several years in administration, then she worked as an income maintenance caseworker, and most recently, she works as an adult services caseworker in our unit. Allison helps to administer a lot of very specific programs with very specific federal and state rules. These cases and programs help people to be able to continue to live independently in their home and to be safe in the community. Allison's work knowledge is exceptional. She helps administer these programs with these very specific rules. They also change frequently. I left that part out. And she stays informed in that rule area, and she makes sure that our agency is making the best decision for these cases. She cares about these programs, and she cares about administering them correctly. She's tough when she needs to be, but she's also thoughtful and kind. I became a supervisor about 2 years ago, and Allison was one of my strongest supporters. Allison has been a trusted coworker of mine for many years. She keeps her word. She does many tasks without even being asked. And she shows up to work. She comes to work. She works hard. She's ready to do her job. She stays if she needs to, and she doesn't complain about it. If I have a tough case, Allison will be the person who can step up and help the team to make sure that this need gets met. So it's been a pleasure to work with you. I'm excited to see what the future holds. At least 15 more. So we'll go ahead and agree to retire on the same day. So thank you guys, and thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Our Employee of the Month could not be here today, so we'll do 2 Employee of the Months in February, which brings us down to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, now's the time that's been set aside for public comment. If you have public comment this morning, please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. When I do, please come to the podium. State your name and where you're from, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. There's a green light that comes on when your time begins. There's a yellow light that will come on when you have about a minute left, and when the red light comes on, you need to conclude your remarks. We have a public hearing on the adoption of the land use plan, and we have 2 special use permit applications. If you're here to speak on those things, please wait until those agenda items come up to speak then. With that said, I've got one person signed up, Spotswood Graves. Come forward, please.
Welcome again this morning, Spotswood.
Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioner Woodland, thank you for your comment about Dr. King observance, and Commissioner Ross, thank you also for your words about that fantastic concert that they gave there. It was a 15-voice choir, and I mean, they presented Handel's Messiah
When
as
they
powerfully
sang,
as I've ever heard it.
when they sang the
It's just,
Hallelujah, that
yeah.
brought the house. There wasn't a dry eye in that church.
One
I'm
of the
telling you.
soloists there had a phenomenal voice. I come to speak about Dr. King celebration. In the congressional record is written by the Honorable Harris Woolford, U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, who worked alongside Dr. King and Congressman John Lewis in civil rights activism. He spoke about establishing the Dr. King holiday, federal holiday. In the congressional record, these words are written. Sitting with my wife in the back seat, Coretta, that is Mrs. King, told of her recurring nightmare that at the end of the road in the civil rights struggle, Martin would be killed. He leaned back from the front seat and said she should dream instead of all of the things they would do while he was alive. Then he added, I didn't ask for this. I was asked and said yes. He hummed a line from the spiritual. The Lord asked me, and my soul said yes. Americans celebrate the official Martin Luther King Day, which is the only federal holiday commemorating an African American, on Monday, January 20th, 2024. It first celebrated in 1986, the 3rd Monday of January. In 1994, Congress designated the holiday as a national day of service, and marking the 3rd Monday of January of each year as Martin Luther King Day, day of service, a day on, not a day off. I speak about Dr. King's life because there are many people who weren't alive to hear him. I remember where I was the day I heard he was killed. Dr. King advocated for nonviolent resistance to overcome injustice as a means of lifting racial oppression. He created change with organized sit-ins, marches, and peaceful demonstrations that highlighted issues of inequality. Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. He was the youngest person to ever receive this honor. He followed in the footsteps of his grandfather and father by entering the ministry to become a Baptist minister. On April the 4th, 1968, my grandmother's birthday, at the age of 39, he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, as he stood on the balcony of his hotel, having traveled to Memphis to lead a march in support of striking sanitation workers. Dare County holds its 33rd celebration of Dr. King's life, his work, and his words of challenge to us. Many of us know that Mrs. Ruth Lewis and Mr. Clarence Lewis for years carried this on their own, and their children, their son, particularly Michael Lewis, continues this work. On Saturday, January the 13th at 11 a.m. at the First Flight High School in Kill Devil Hills, the Elizabeth City State Senior Choir brings a musical concert that presents the legacy of Dr. King. The other thing about this is they are planning this concert. So we have the opportunity to hear college students, Black college students, and a Black college professor give what they want us to hear of Dr. King. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of soul music in that. Following that, there will be a free meal with foods provided by Kelly Catering and Stack 'em High Pancakes, Kitty Hawk. Dr. King said in 1959, make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a better nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Thank you very much. January 13th, 11 p.m., First Flight High School, Kitty Hawk, Kill Devil Hills.
Thank you, Spotswood.
Is there other public comment this morning? Anyone else here for public comment? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Duke.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, staff. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. We start the year off. I saw something on the agenda last week. I've had a very hectic schedule like we all had the last few weeks, and didn't have enough time to dig into it anymore. But item 13 is a stormwater. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was going to say, you need to identify yourself for the.
My name is Duke Garrity. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Outer Banks Home Builders Association. I thought I was known up here.
But not on TV.
Yeah. Item 13 on your agenda for today is a stormwater management update. And I'm confused. I looked at it last week. It was a little bit exhausting. It was over 100 pages, and I'm hoping you read it. I don't know the purpose of this right now. I don't see any ordinance language in there. There's some references to phase 1 and phase 2 stormwater rules at the state level, at the federal levels, and we don't fall under those parameters. I don't know what we're doing with this. Is it just a report? Is it going to be an update to any existing ordinances? It hasn't gone before the planning board. It hasn't been brought up for public hearing. So I'm hoping that you'll take a few minutes to explain what we're doing with the stormwater manual update. There's a bulk of it is mostly DOT recommendations. It pronounces, and it's very, very detailed for unincorporated Dare County, where the deficiencies are in culverts and swales and where we could make the updates to it. What I'm hoping is that, and we'll see where we go with this, is what's going to happen to individual property owners. What I've noticed in a few of the towns, particularly Nags Head, is the last person on the block who builds a house, he's the one who's got to follow all the new rules. We had one builder had $25,000 worth of improvements he had to make in the village of Nags Head, which has a stormwater plan and has swales, and he had to spend that money to improve it to the new ordinances that were put in there. So we'll have to take a little bit of time to look at if we are planning on changing some ordinances, or it's just going to be a report and use it as a guide. Like I said, I'm not sure what the whole purpose was. FEMA, who gave a grant, I think it was FEMA, for the report and pays for it, but they never take into consideration what the costs are. They just come up with rules, and we've seen this over and over again. So I'm hoping that we'll spend a little time with it. Like I said, I don't really know the purpose of doing this and what the report was and what started it. There was a few mentions of meeting with the Outer Banks Home Builders Association and the Outer Banks Association of Realtors. I don't remember. I've been in the position for 3 years. I don't remember getting notified. I know I didn't go to any hearings. I talked to my cohort, Jay Overton. He doesn't remember anything about it either. So while we consider the crisis we have right now with affordable housing and adding more costs on. I know yesterday went into effect, we just doubled the water tap fee. And add another $3,000, I think it is, to the water tap of building a house. And all these little things, a little bit and a little bit, is no wonder why so many people can't afford to live here. Anyway, I'll end it there, and I'll wait and see what the discussion is when item 13 comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Duke.
Other public comment this morning?
Welcome this morning, Malcolm.
Morning, Commissioners, and welcome to the new year.
Please identify yourself.
I'm Malcolm. I'm from Manio, and I don't represent anybody.
Is that Malcolm Fearing or Malcolm Smith?
Malcolm, well, Fearing most of the
Oh,
time.
okay, thank you.
Most of the time it's Fearing. I hope that didn't eat into my time, by the way. Reverend Graves said something in his prayer that I want to reemphasize, and that's hope and healing. Hope and healing in the year 24. First, I'd like to thank this board for your service. Many, many times it's a thankless job. You hear the problems, you address the problems, and so many times you don't get a thank you. I stand before you doing that today for many people that appreciate the work that you all are doing, especially in the issue of housing. I want to thank the General Assembly. You know, there's been a lot of criticisms over the General Assembly and the money and how it was handled in Dare County. It was $35 million the state of North Carolina through the General Assembly awarded to Dare County to address housing. I want to thank them. I'd like to discuss two issues, but time will only allow me to address one. Healthcare is one that I would like to always bring forward to the community, the need for greater emphasis on the delivery of healthcare in our county. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a history lesson, which y'all probably know, but it's a census in 1950. Dare County had 5,000 and some people in 1950. Currituck had more in the census. I can't read without my glasses. The highest population in 1950 was Hyde County, if you can imagine that. Housing. As we go through this issue in this year, and it's been a difficult issue for this board and the community, and I understand that. But I'd like to give some information. The median cost for a house in Duck is $940,000. It's a medium cost. The lowest cost in the county is Wanchese at $322,000. That brings us to one of the issues that we have today. The down payment for a house in Duck would be $188,000, a payment of some $5,000 a month at a 7% interest rate. In Wanchese, it would be $64,000, a payment of $1,700. Now, that doesn't include taxes, insurance, and all the other issues that a family would have to have. The median income for a family in Dare County is somewhere south of $70,000. For an individual, it's around $41,000. So the vast majority of the citizens of Dare County cannot afford the median cost of a house. In the Carolina study that was done, and maybe there'll be some NC State supporters that don't agree with everything in the study. I know Bobby would, because he's a good Carolina fan. It's said that we need some 3,000 units in Dare County, 3,000 units. The more inflated acreage number, you take half that for a half-acre lot, is 1,500 acres. A more conservative number at a quarter-acre lot is 750 acres of land. I know y'all probably know these numbers, but the vast majority of the people don't. What I'm coming to y'all to talk about is the next generation. Currently, there are 50-some hundred students in our school enrolled in the public schools, somewhere around 300 homeschool children. Where will they go? Where will they live? Most likely not in Dare County. And that's the issue that y'all are tackling, and it's an important issue. I have an idea, and I've proposed it throughout the county. I call it Buffalo City. It's land that y'all currently own. And the concern that I have about Buffalo City, currently, it's being advertised for lease, as it has been for years, for farmland. I would advocate, and I've talked to Bobby, and he brought it to my attention, that there's an exclusion or a provision in the lease that would, if y'all need the land, y'all could opt out. But I'd say as we work through the task force, we look at all available land for the future, for that next generation. Where will the ball fields go? Where will the schools go? And again, where will the pickleball courts go? So again, I want to thank you for delving into this issue. I know it's been frustrating, but I know it's also an issue of our time that we need to resolve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel.
Other public comment this morning? Anyone else here for public comment? Any public comment in Buxton?
No comment from Buxton.
That, Mr. Chairman, we close the public comment and we've moved to item 4A, which is the resolution concerning HB 259. I'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, County Manager. Housing, as Malcolm just mentioned to you, is certainly a top priority for us here in Dare County, and this board has never shied away from major issues that face our community. We've always done what we humanly possibly could to do what's in the best interest of our citizens, and I don't need to go into a lengthy barrage of things that we've accomplished over the past. We will share that with you at the state of the county. But we have been dealing with this for quite a few years. And we certainly understand the position of our counterparts in the municipalities on potential sites that we have looked at up until this point, and we certainly respect their position and what they've done in their respective municipalities. And we continue to look for places to do this in the county. We're not giving up. We're not going to. We feel like it's an important enough issue that that's why I said after the issues that we faced with some of the municipalities that I formed a task force, and I will be announcing that beginning date here very shortly, to where we can hopefully work together to come to some consensus to make this happen. This board, and we've stated this publicly prior to this date, that we have no intention circumventing any ordinance or rule or regulation that a municipality has. We didn't have anything to do with this recent state HB 259. And having talked to our municipalities and our mayors and listened to them, I meet with the mayors monthly. The county manager meets with the planning directors monthly. And as a result of this HB 259, I met with Bobby, and we've come up with a resolution that I would like to present to this board this morning concerning HB 259, that I'm optimistic and hopeful that you will support this resolution. At this time, I'd like to ask the county manager if he will, and I'll present this resolution in writing to you, but I'd like for him to read that resolution at this time.
This is a resolution concerning HB 259. Whereas over the years, the cost of housing in Dare County has risen to unprecedented levels, resulting in a critical need for workforce housing for those living and working in Dare County. And whereas for many years, Dare County has been working to provide workforce housing and has been unsuccessful in those efforts. And whereas the North Carolina General Assembly recognized the workforce housing needs of Dare County and pursuant to the provisions of SL 2022-74, appropriated funds to help address those needs. And whereas workforce housing entities have attempted to construct workforce housing in multiple locations within Dare County and have been unsuccessful in those efforts due to, among other things, lack of cooperation from local governments in those locations. And whereas in response thereto, Dare County has established the Dare County Workforce Housing Task Force, made up of representatives of the local governments in Dare County and other stakeholders to attempt to reach consensus among the local governments and stakeholders on the solutions to the workforce housing crisis. And whereas without request from Dare County and in an effort to assist Dare County in its efforts to provide workforce housing the General Assembly adopted HB 259, which exempted workforce housing constructed pursuant to the provisions of SL 2022-74 from several provisions of Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General Statutes, thereby limiting the application of some local government zoning regulations to such housing efforts. And whereas the need for workforce housing in Dare County substantially exceeds the number of housing units that can be constructed with the funds appropriated by the General Assembly, and the need for workforce housing will continue after those funds are expended. And whereas the long-term success of workforce housing in Dare County, the local governments and stakeholders of the county must come together to reach consensus on housing solutions. And whereas HB 259 has been adamantly opposed by the towns located in Dare County to the extent they have filed legal action to set it aside. And whereas the town's adamant opposition to HB 259 has created an atmosphere that makes it difficult for Dare County to reach consensus necessary among the town's citizens and stakeholders to solve the workforce housing problem in the long term. Now therefore be it resolved that to help further the discussions of the Dare County Workforce Housing Task Force, to reduce acrimony between the towns and Dare County, and to help the process of reaching consensus among local governments, citizens, and stakeholders to find long-term solutions to the workforce housing problem, the Dare County Board of Commissioners confirms their earlier verbal statements of their intention to solve the workforce housing problem in Dare County by working together with local governments, citizens, and stakeholders, and not to use HB 259 to exempt any workforce housing solutions from the local government zoning authority as a part of any proposed solution. Adopted this the second day of January 2024.
Now we'll present that to the board as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's seconded by the vice chairman. The floor is open for further discussion. Hearing none, those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your support.
That
County
brings us
manager?
to item 5 on the agenda. Item 5 is a zoning text amendment to section 22-23 MHA zoning district. Section 22-2 definitions and the addition of a new section 2258.10 portable storage containers. we'll first conduct the public hearing, and then I'll ask the planning director to come forward and go through this with you and answer any questions that you might have. With that said, is there anyone here that would like to speak to that? I have 2 sign-ups. One is Duke Garrity. Duke,
He's still here.
do you want to speak?
He's sitting right there.
Oh, okay. There you go. The second is Ben Gallup.
Mr. Allen, I'm representing the applicant. I would want to go for it and go after the planning.
Okay.
Mr. Gill.
That'd be
I've signed
fine.
up unnecessarily, I believe.
All right. Any other public comment on this issue? Any public comment from Buxton?
No comment from Buxton.
With that, we would close the public hearing, and Noah?
Good morning, Noah.
Morning, how you doing? Hope everyone had a good holiday. A text amendment has been submitted by William and Shelley Doherty to the MHA zoning ordinance. The applicants are seeking the addition of portable storage unit services to the currently permitted use of many storage facilities. In addition, the applicants have included amendments to the definition section and a new section to the ordinance which would regulate portable storage container services on and off the location site and the customer site who would be renting the storage unit. In your packet, there's draft language for each of the sections, the addition to the MHA, the changes to the definition section, and the new ordinance section. During planning board review, the planning board found that the addition to the MHA seemed reasonable and appropriate since it was an expansion of a use already offered in that district that was similar to other uses in the district. They found that the definitions were consistent for the service being provided. During the review of the new section that would regulate how the service would operate on site and on the customer site, I expanded some of the language that was submitted by the applicant to address the flood concerns and signage concerns on the units. In addition, during the planning board discussion, they found that we needed to include a provision that addressed the construction of these units in case these weren't prefab purchase units and somebody wanted to construct these themselves, that they had to meet the requirements of the North Carolina Building Code for our wind zone rating, which is a wind zone 3 here in Dare County, 140 mile an hour. The planning board, at the close of their discussion and review of the changes, found that the amendments were consistent with the Dare County Land Use Plan and recommended favorable action. In addition, we also included to expand it to other commercial districts that offered mini storage facilities in case in the future another mini storage facility or a storage facility wanted to expand to have portable storage services, that we didn't have to come back with further text amendments to allow it in other districts. So there's a list of districts that it's going to be included in as well that offer storage or similar.
So is the better part of unincorporated Dare County that this will impact as well?
It would be in districts that already offer commercial storage, whether it be a mini storage warehouses, however it's worded in their districts.
Okay, just for clarification's sake, Connex boxes, we don't allow, the ordinance prohibits the installation of electric power running to those. Would this be the same here? This is not apples to apples, as if we're going to be running power to a portable storage unit.
No, sir. This is a portable storage container, to where in the sense of it that it is temporary in nature on the customer site. On the provider site, it would be there, for a temporary period of time, fastened to the site, but would not have power ran to it. No, sir.
Thank you for the clarification. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, no, I had just one quick one. And you've just touched on it, I think. The draft language is proposed as a new section because it's appropriate, since containers will not always be located in the MHA zoning district. I think you just said they could be on a customer's private property.
Yes, sir. Somebody
Right.
would call for, the service. It would be delivered to their house. It would sit on their property. There's provision in the language that limits it to 2 weeks, 14
There we go.
days.
That's what I was searching for.
And then it
Okay,
would have
thanks,
to be
Earl.
brought back. The only
Okay.
change in that would be if there was a building permit, active building permit for that
That'd be
property.
different, yes.
They could have it on site for the duration of that building permit.
Okay.
No, another clarification. Are these storage units for debris, like house building debris?
No, sir, these aren't dumpster containers. No, sir, these are fully enclosed storage containers, roofed, walled, with a access door.
So this would not open the door for that at all?
No, no, sir, not, this is strictly for storage.
Noah, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It said in there that it's consistent with the 2009 land use plan.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know the 2022 plan has not been discussed or approved, but in looking ahead, would it be consistent also with that
Yes, ma'am.
land use plan? Okay.
And my question is, when they're on the storage facility site, are they anchored or protected in any way from hurricane storm or anything like that?
Yes, sir, there's provisions in the language that says that they have to be secured and fastened with the provisions of the Dare County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. So that would require some sort of anchoring to prevent, flotation or lateral movement.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I believe you said to withstand 140?
Yes, sir, they got to be constructed to meet North Carolina Building Code for our wind zone, which is wind zone 3.
How would they do that? I mean, if I needed one of these and it was delivered to my house and it's only going to be there 2 weeks, am I going to have giant stakes and ropes and I'm going to
No,
chain it
sir, if it
down?
was on your property for those 14 days, you wouldn't have to secure it. But when it's brought, from your property where it's there for a temporary fashion and brought back to where it's being stored.
That's the permanent.
There's the potential
Got
that
it.
it could be there
Okay.
for a longer amount of time. So that's
All right.
why there's the provision to have it anchored.
No, just for clarification, this is something like the pods?
Yes, sir,
You see advertised.
that would be, a national
Right.
brand of these, yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Is
So
there
they're
a,
probably steel. They're probably steel?
The ones that I have seen, I believe the ones the applicants have purchased, they're either of aluminum or steel, a metal construction. But we felt it necessary during the planning board review to add that provision in there that they meet that wind code requirement. Because somebody could self-construct these, out of wood or other material. And so we felt it important to have a provision in there that made sure that they were able to withstand the weather that we have here.
Noah, was there a ratio of how many storage units on what size lot? I mean, is there a number?
Well, for the commercial service site where the storage facility would be, they would be regulated by lot coverage. So these would be treated as lot coverage.
Okay.
And I believe there's a limitation on the number of 2 portable storage on a property at the same time. So when they went to a customer's property, you could only have 2 units.
But on the storage site,
That would be regulated by
regulated.
their lot coverage limitations.
Okay, anyone else?
I think the applicant would like to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Gillum.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Happy
Morning.
New Year, Commissioners, Chairman Woodard, Ben Gallup. I've met some of you over the years. Here on behalf of the applicant, we don't have any issues with what's been proposed and has changed from our initial application. If you have any questions for me, I'm glad to try and answer that. My clients, Billy and Shelley Daugherty, are here. They may be able to answer some more questions if you had any other questions.
Y'all have any more questions of their attorney?
I'm satisfied.
You satisfied? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Noah? All right. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion. I move that the draft amendment to Section 2223-2, MHA zoning district, Section 22-2, definitions, and new Section 22-58-10, portable storage containers be adopted as drafted by the planning staff. A statement of consistency and reasonableness as prepared by staff is adopted in part of this motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Bateman, for that motion. Is there a second?
Second right here.
Seconded by Commissioner House and Couch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Noah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, folks.
Chairman, item 6 is a public hearing for the county adoption of the Dare County 2022 Land Use Plan. Again, we'll have the public hearing, and I'd ask Noah to come forward and present that to you and answer any questions that you have. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak to that issue? Any public comment on that issue? Any public comment from, or anybody that wish to speak at the public hearing from Buxton?
No comment from Buxton.
That, Mr. Chairman, we close the public hearing, and Noah, I turn it back over to you.
All right, welcome back, Noah.
Yes, sir. You see a lot of me today, I think. So last month I presented to you the land use plan and kind of the background knowledge of where we were in development of this plan. As part of the state's requirements, we have to hold the public hearing before any adoption can be made. And then in the packet, there's a resolution for the adoption, if y'all choose to do so, that has to be submitted to the state as part of the local adoption of the plan. So if you have any further questions before action.
I'm just reading, this may be a clarification. I'm reading the resolution. 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas, and it cites at the regular meeting on January 2nd, 2023, we,
Oh, that should be corrected. Yes, sir.
that's, I thought it was 24. I just want to
24,
make
yes,
sure I
sir.
was catching it. Okay, very good. No other questions?
You have one,
Yeah,
Commissioner? Couch?
Noah, can you just kind of give an overview? The planning board approved this. Any highlights or anything you want to point out? I mean, was it done in one meeting? Has this been done over a series of meetings with the
This has
plan?
been over a series of years, and we started this process in 2018. Back in 2018, y'all delegated at the time the current planning director and the planning board to be the steering committee and the committee that drafted this plan. So this has been, at this point in time, almost 5 years in the process.
Yeah, forgive me, I see it there. Well, that's been fully vetted.
Noah, is there any truth to the fact that this contains a designation of 150 acres for the future development of 300 pickleball courts?
No.
I thought that was an unfounded rumor. I wanted to clarify for everyone, it's not true. Okay.
Rob, that wouldn't be enough.
No, it wouldn't be enough.
County Manager, would you like to read this resolution for us, please?
Sure. This is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Dare County for the North Carolina adopting the 2022 Dare County Land Use Plan. Whereas from March 2018 through December 2023, Dare County drafted a Coastal Area Management Act land use planning and conducted a series of public workshops and meetings as a part of a comprehensive public participation program under the leadership of the Dare County Planning Department and the Dare County Planning Board. And whereas on November 7th, 2023, the Dare County Planning Board recommended approval of the adoption of the draft plan. And whereas the Dare County Board of Commissioners conducted a duly advertised public hearing on the draft plan at the regular meeting of the Dare County Board of Commissioners on January 2nd, 2024. And whereas at the regular meeting on January 2nd, 2024, the Board of Commissioners of Dare County, North Carolina, found the policies and future land use maps in the draft plan to be consistent with the Dare County desired vision for the future and unanimously approved the adoption of the draft plan. And whereas the adopted plan will be submitted as required by state law to the district planner for the Division of Coastal Management under North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality and forwarded to the division director. And whereas a review of the adopted plan by the Coastal Resources Commission will be scheduled and the CRC will then decide on certification of the locally adopted plan. Whereas a certified copy of the Dare County CAMA land use plan will be forwarded to the Office of Coastal Management for federal approval. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dare County Board of Commissioners has adopted the draft plan. Be it further resolved that the County Manager of Dare County is hereby authorized to submit the adopted plan to the state for certification as described above. Adopted this the second day of January 2024.
Thank you, Bobby. Is there any further discussion concerning the resolution?
Just, Noah, just a question going back to the land use plan. As you mentioned, there was a lot of effort put into this over a number of years to put this in its current form. As things change, and it seems like things change rapidly anymore, if something were to developed that we needed to make a change as part of the land use plan to adjust to whatever were to happen. We could do that by just coming in, discussing what needed to be changed and vote on it, and then submit that to the state as a change.
At a later time, yeah, you could amend this at a later date, but again, these are just, it's a policy document. Nothing in here is regulatory.
Gotcha.
So anything that needed to be done that was regulatory and enforceable would be done through a text amendment to the
Gotcha.
zoning
Thank you.
ordinance.
Just to bring you up to speed, there's a process in place at the CRC level now. It's just started. In fact, there'll be some more comment on it and some work on it at the February meeting of the Coastal Resources Advisory Council, where they're trying to update the land use plan process of doing this. One of the things you saw in the regulation, it has to go to the feds to have them look at it. They're looking at taking that out because it doesn't do a lot, but it slows the process down. They're looking to try to make it easier and make it something that you can do quicker and therefore be more nimble in how you respond to changing things. So that's all going to happen over the next months as they work through all that, but that is in the process as we speak.
Anyone else?
Motion to approve the adoption.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner House to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Bass Knight and Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Bob, I'd just like to say,
Yes,
Noah,
sir.
thank you for doing this. I know it started under Donna. But guys, this is the roadmap for what we're governing for the next few years. It's very, very important.
It is.
And it's not something you just look at and say, okay, we're going to do this, and the planning board stamps it. You have to go over each individual thing, and do we want this? What's the record? What's the plan and rationale for keeping this in there? What's the plan and rationale for changing it? It's so very, very important. I've done 2 of these, and it was tedious, and quite frankly, it pissed the hell out of me because it took a long time to do it. So anyway, thank you for your efforts.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep, same.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you again, Noah.
Thank you.
Chairman, item 7 on the agenda is a proclamation honoring the 150th anniversary of the Chicamacomico Life Saving Station, and John Griffin and others are here for that. Come forward, please.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. I'm Larry Grubbs. I'm the president of the Chicamacomico Historical Association. This is John Griffin, our executive director. Ralph Buxton, who is heading up the steering committee for our 150th commemoration celebration. This celebration is not just of Chicamacomico. We're spearheading it because we're in place and we're an up and running nonprofit, that's bringing that history alive. But it also commemorates all of the 7 original stations that were built in 1874. The only 3 of those buildings that are still in place is Little Kennekeet Life Saving Station, which is owned by the Park Service. Chicamacomico, of course, which is an up and running non-for-profit museum and visitation site, and the Black Pelican Restaurant, which was actually the Kitty Hawk Station. All 3 of us have already been in discussion, and everybody is on board to really make this an event for Dare County for 2024, and we appreciate Dare County's support over the years for everything at Chicamacomico, but in particular with this event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. John, anybody else? Would you all like to say anything?
I'm going to go sit down.
Okay.
Just say thanks for all the support over the years. Ralph has come back to Chicamacomico to head up the planning committee, which was the steering committee, but it's now turned into the planning committee. We're hoping for a year-long celebration. We'll have speakers from the Coast Guard, naturally. In fact, we will have the Master Chief, the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, as not the keynote speaker, but a person saying a few words. The Master Chief of the Coast Guard, if you figure 1% of the people in the Coast Guard make Master Chief, and there is one of those becomes the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, and that person is coming to help us.
Fantastic. Good deal. Well, I believe we have a proclamation to read and approve.
This is a proclamation honoring the 150th anniversary of the Chicamacomico Life Saving Station in Rodanthe and declaring October of 2024 as Life Saving Service Commemoration Month. Whereas during the late 1700s and early 1800s, an increase in maritime trade resulted in the greater possibility of nearshore shipwrecks occurring along the east coast of the United States. And whereas at that time, large sections of the eastern seaboard were sparsely populated, leaving sailors with little hope of being rescued should their ship begin to sink, and a very small chance of survival if they made it to shore due to the isolated nature of the beaches. And whereas in 1848, the foundation for the future of the United States Life-Saving Service was laid when the United States government provided a New Jersey congressman with funding to provide life-saving services in his state. And whereas in the years that followed, the shipping of goods as well as transportation by water, although perilous, expanded dramatically as the United States became industrialized. And whereas this increase in maritime activity subsequently resulted in greater loss of lives and vessels along the eastern seaboard, and dramatic events involving those losses demonstrated the need for a formal life-saving service to be established. And whereas Sumner Kimball, a young lawyer from Maine, was appointed to serve as the chief of the U.S. Department of Treasury's Revenue Marine Division in 1871, and asked the U.S. Congress to authorize $200,000 to fund life-saving stations along the East Coast. And whereas on April 20th, 1871, the U.S. Congress appropriated this $200,000 in funding for life-saving purposes, and the same year, a network of existing volunteer life-saving stations scattered along the East Coast were formally organized as a separate agency of the U.S. Department of Treasury, resulting in the official establishment of the United States Life-Saving Service. And whereas Sumner Kimball identified the coast of North Carolina, which is often referred to as the graveyard of Atlantic, due to the frequency of shipwrecks that occurred as vessels attempted to traverse this area's treacherous shoals, as an area of high priority. And whereas by 1874, funds were appropriated to begin building 7 life-saving stations along the coast of North Carolina, the first of which to be completed was the Chicamacomico Life-Saving Station in Rodanthe, which was commissioned on December 4th, 1874. And whereas construction of all 7 life-saving stations, Chicamacomico, Jones Hill, Caffey's Inlet, Kitty Hawk, Nag's Head, Organ Inlet, and Little Kennebec, was completed by October 1874. And whereas in 1878, an additional 11 stations were constructed on the coast of North Carolina, including the now famous Kill Devil Hills Life Station, whose crew members provided assistance to the Wright brothers, as well as the Hatteras Inlet Station. And whereas a series of additional stations continue to be constructed from the North Carolina-Virginia state line to the northern border of South Carolina, eventually totaling 29 stations that were located on average of 6 miles apart from one to the other. And whereas over the course of its 44 years in operation before it was merged with the Revenue Cutter Service and became the United States Coast Guard, the United States Life-Saving Service responded to 28,121 vessels, and of the 178,741 lives that were in peril at sea, crew members successfully saved a record number of 177,286 lives. Whereas we note that October 2024 is the 150th anniversary of the arrival of the United States Life-Saving Service to the coast of North Carolina, and whereas we reflect upon the rich heritage of the men and women of Dare County who sacrificed comfort and risked their own personal safety to save the lives of strangers in danger at sea, and whereas we acknowledge the tireless work that continues to preserve the heritage, stories, and legacies of the United States Life-Saving Service in North Carolina, ensuring that the heroism of these men are never forgotten, and whereas we honor the legacy of the United States Life-Saving Service in North Carolina and appreciate the thousands of visitors a year who continue to be inspired by the positive impacts of the surfmen, their families, and descendants, many of whom still reside in the county today. And therefore, we, the Dare County Board of Commissioners, do hereby recognize and celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Chicamacomico Life-Saving Station in Rodanthe, and also proclaim October 2024 as Life-Saving Service Commemoration Month in Dare County in honor of those who so bravely served in the United States Life-Saving Service along our shoreline. This is the second day of January 2024.
Motion to adopt.
There's a motion on the floor by the Vice Chairman and Commissioner House. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bass Knight. Any further discussion?
Just looking at that statistic, over 178,000 lives in peril at sea, and they rescued over 177,000 of them. You had a 99 point, I'm no math prodigy, 0.3% of surviving a shipwreck.
Yeah.
And
Pretty incredible.
they talk about it, the most efficient bureaucracy that ever existed. There's your stat right there.
I was further impressed by the fact that in 1874, they built 7 stations. And in 1878, they built 11 stations in that 1 year. Wonder how many permits they had to get.
It's about $2,500 a station,
Probably
which
none.
at that point was considered outrageous. But I mean, you think about what it would take to build one of those now. Not just in Hatteras Island, but other places. I mean, Sumner Kimball, that name is still there. The Jensen brothers, they built the Little Kenny Key. They might have been involved. The guys from Chicamacomico would have to answer that. The Jensen brothers out of New Bern, that name is still active on the Outer Banks. Guys, are you bringing in, are you getting any attention for, I know you had a very successful trip with the Black Powder Group to Maine. Larry, thanks to you for that.
There's a video out that we're going to be sending to you guys to see, and we have another event that I spoke to Mr. Allen briefly about before the meeting started, and you all will be invited to that.
Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
keep us posted of all the events. Our Public Information Officer, Ms. Hester, she'll make sure that public's aware. So, congratulations, guys.
Well done.
Yes.
Well done. All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Jim, that brings us to item 8 on the agenda. This is a special use permit application 7-2023 for proposed group housing on existing residential property. The clerk is going down to swear the applicants, and as soon as they complete that, we'll begin.
A special use permit application has been submitted by James Yax and John Kuchta for a proposed group housing project. The property is identified as parcel 015154000 on the Dare County tax records and is located at 53770 NC 12 Highway in Frisco. There's an existing single-family dwelling on the site. The applicant's proposing to install or construct 2 new single-family dwellings under the group development standards, section 2231 of the ordinance. There's a site plan submitted with the application. The site plan meets the requirements of section 2231 and the S1 zoning ordinance. All the buildings are separated by the required 20 feet. The project is under lot coverage. Adequate parking is shown on the site plan that meets the intent of the ordinance. The planning board reviewed this and found the conditions of the SUP to be reasonable and appropriate. I don't see any issues with the site plan as it's configured. So, and the project engineer, Rick House, is here if any questions concerning the site plan.
No. We have some of the applicant, which I'm sure you will ask him to.
Please tell us who you are.
Yeah, I'm Rick House with House Engineering to prepare the site plan for Mr. Yax, who's also here.
And you're here to speak on behalf of Mr. Yax.
I am.
Okay, I've got 3 questions to ask you. Do you all agree to the admission of the file in this matter to the board as evidence in this matter?
Yes.
Okay. And do you confirm and agree to the statements that were just made by the planning director?
Yes.
And finally, do you consent to the SUP as it's now written?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that'd be my questions.
All right, thank you, County Manager. Any questions of the board?
Any other evidence you'd like to present?
Not at this time.
And the applicant agrees to the conditions, correct?
That's correct.
One last thing, Mr. Is there anyone else here to present evidence in this matter?
Okay, seeing none, then that would be,
All right, thank you, County Manager. I'll ask the board, what is their pleasure?
Move to approve, please.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Couch to approve this, and I believe it was seconded by Commissioner Bateman. And the floor is once again open for further discussion. Hearing none, then, those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you.
very
Happy New
much.
Year to you.
that brings us to item 9. This is a special use permit, application 8-2023. This is for travel trailer sites on existing commercial property. And once again, we'll have the clerk swear in anybody who's here to present evidence. You're going to...
Sworn in, do the applicant.
Yes.
Todd and Angela Gaskell submitted a special use permit application to allow for travel trailer sites on an existing commercial property in Frisco. The property is identified as parcel 015069000 in the Dare County tax records and is located at 53013 NC 12 Highway in Frisco. Currently on site, there's a commercial structure that functions as a restaurant, deli. So this having a commercial use on it already qualifies for this section of the travel trailer park ordinance. The total parcel is 4.32 acres. The area dedicated to the travel trailer sites will be 3.55 acres. The section of the ordinance that allows travel trailer sites in conjunction with commercial use requires a minimum of 20 sites. They're proposing 24, exceeding the ordinance requirements. The 24 spaces will be accessed off of a gravel road in a configuration that has been reviewed by the fire marshal, and he agrees that the configuration works for emergency vehicle apparatus. The applicant is proposing to install 2 wastewater treatment systems that will service the travel trailer sites. Each site will have full hookup water and electric. There will be a bathhouse installed on the property that meets the requirements of the ordinance as well for the number of facilities, for the number of travel trailer sites. Conditions have been added to the special use permit that reflect this. The area disturbance on the site exceeds the thresholds that so that will require state stormwater management plan, sedimentation, erosion control. Copy of this permit should be provided to the planning department before any ground disturbing activity can occur. The applicant has, in the site plan, has proposed a vegetative buffer around the travel trailer sites. There's conditions that have been added to the special use permit that reflect that. Dare County Planning Board reviewed this on December 8th and found the conditions to be reasonable and appropriate.
Thank you, Noel.
Questions for Noel? Questions for Noel?
Will the existing commercial building remain?
Yes.
Mr. Gaskell, if you come up, please. Please state your name.
I'm Todd Gaskell,
And
Frisco.
you're the applicant, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I've got the same questions for you. Do you agree and consent to the admission of the file in this matter to the board as evidence?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you confirm and agree with the statements of the planning director that you just heard?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you consent to the terms and conditions in the special use permit as drafted?
Yes, sir.
That would be my questions. Any
Thank
questions
you,
from the
Ken.
board?
Yeah, I have a couple. This is just out of curiosity. Will you provide 30 and 50 amp service?
Yes, sir.
Looks like you've got pull-through sites and back-end sites.
Yes, sir.
Are they, I know you said there might be some year-round. Would the year-round, just depending on, would they primarily be in the pull-through sites or the back-end sites? Is it?
We really haven't determined
Haven't
that.
determined
Really,
yet?
it depends on the the individual, really, when it
Gotcha.
comes to that.
Whatever their preference is.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else have any questions?
Did you
Do
just
I have
ask
any
about?
fire pits?
Excuse me?
Are there any fire pits at each individual site?
Not at this time, no. We have.
Did you just ask about year-round?
Yeah, he says, the applicant says there's the potential for year-round rentals.
Item 5 says the length of occupancy of any trailer shall be less than 90 consecutive days.
The travel trailer park ordinance allows for a travel trailer to sit on the property
Right.
in a ready-to-move fashion for a year-round basis, meaning that you could park your camper there. It could stay in that travel trailer park for year-round, but you shall not occupy it for a permanent residence.
Right.
And that's consistent.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent throughout. So you gotta leave, come back.
Got it. Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'd like to go ahead.
Commissioner Baker?
So, no, this also has the same restrictions, so many days between a named storm, you have to remove the trailers.
There's conditions in the travel trailer park ordinance that address inclement weather situations, and that the park owner is responsible in those situations.
The ordinance requires compliance with the FEMA rules about those, and those FEMA rules require that it can't be permanently affixed. It's got to have the wheels on it. It's got to have the tongues on it. You can't have something attached to it, and you're supposed to move it once every 364 days or something like that. And that has to be complied with.
So that applies here too then?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you have, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
if you have I think it was something stated about you can put a step or a little porch as long as it's not attached. Is that?
Yes, sir, there's a size limitation to that, 100 square
Yeah.
feet for a
100 square
landing.
feet.
So if in an inclement weather situation, and the travel trail has to be moved, has to be pulled out and taken away, what happens to the porch?
Those should be anchored and secured anyway. They should be some type of helical anchor or some way, and pile embedment into the ground to where
So
those.
if it floods, it's not going anywhere.
Yes, sir. They
Gotcha.
should be anchored in some sort of fashion.
Gotcha.
Given the locale of this, I mean, if you had wind-driven water, if this was waterfront, that decks and porches coming out of the ground would be a reality. This is in the center of the island. It's a good half a mile away, so there would be standing water more than anything from a storm, in my opinion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Yes, sir.
Move that the proposed travel trailer sites in conjunction with an existing commercial property and site plan submitted by Todd and Angie Gaskell be approved as recommended by the planning board.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bateman. Floor, once again, is open for comments. Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Good luck, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Chairman, item 10, the county audit requirement for volunteer fire departments and other nonprofits. Item 11, the presentation of the June 30th, 2023 annual comprehensive financial report. And item 12, the update to the county financial policies will all be presented by our financial director, Dave Clausen. I will remind you, Mr. Chairman, we have a closed session that is time certain, so if we get close to 11 o'clock, we'll need to break.
Absolutely.
For that closed session.
We can do that. Good morning, Mr. Clausen.
Good morning. Let me first apologize for my voice and for the cough drops I'll have while I talk. Item number 10 is the county has policy for all nonprofits. If they receive $100,000 or more, we've required an audit for several years. Over the last specifically 2 to 3 years, they've had more and more trouble getting the audit done if they have a contract, and even more finding someone to do it. I've
Sound
verified
familiar, Board?
that 2 local firms have
find
pulled
anybody.
out within the last calendar year of doing nonprofit audits, and I think there's only 1 left. We had help from Teresa Osborne from Osborne and Dowdy, or Dowdy and Osborne, and Colonel Sloman over on the beach, and they helped us researched some alternate procedures, which are called agreed upon procedures. It is an engagement with a CPA firm, but it's not as extensive as an audit. You specify what you want them to do. It's a much less cost. All these firms are still willing to do agreed upon procedures. So in early December, the audit committee met, and we recommended to the audit committee that we change the procedure, and the audit committee voted to recommend to the board that we retroactively change the nonprofit policy for all audits not yet completed, because we've got a couple of fire departments that are a couple of years behind. Again, for anyone receiving $100,000 or more, that first we accept the IRS Form 990 as the financial statements, and I skipped a paragraph in there. There is a state law that says any nonprofit that gets $5,000 or more from local, state, or federal money has to file a 990, and that's usually done by a tax preparer. And then we changed the audit requirement to agreed upon procedures by a CPA firm. We'll ask them to determine if bank recs have been done for each month, to test one of those bank recs, and then to pull 25 transactions to include one receipt, and if they have payroll, to include one payroll. That'll reduce the cost. That'll get them up to date, get them completed more timely. It will affect Avon Fire Department, Buxton, Frisco, Hatteras, Salvo, Collington, Roanoke Island, unless they've got a requirement from the town of Manteo, which I don't know, and Rodanthe Waves Fire Department and the Hatteras Rescue Squad. It won't affect the community centers or Children Youth Partnership because they've got other audit requirements that are not county requirements. So we're asking you to authorize staff to change that policy and to include those changes in all the future contracts with the nonprofits.
Commissioner Ross, any comments?
Yes. Let's make a motion to approve. This makes sense. We couldn't find auditors. It's a cumbersome, bureaucratic, costly effort otherwise, and this is a very efficient and appropriate move forward. So I move that we adopt these new financial reporting policies.
Thank you, Commissioner Ross. Motion on the floor by Commissioner Ross, been seconded by Commissioner House and the Vice Chairman. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
The item number 11 is your audit report for June 30th of 2023. Dan Morrow is with us virtually. He is now our audit partner. You've had several presentations from Bob Taylor, he was the managing partner of the firm. He's semi-retired. He did come and work on our audit. He is staying with him to do some tax work. But I'm going to let Dan go first, and then I'll have a pretty short presentation for you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome, Dan.
Well,
Dan, you're not living up to Bob's reputation with that bow tie, brother.
yeah, that's a high standard. He sets it high. So yeah, as David said, I'm the partner now with your audit team, and Bob Taylor is still with our firm, and he did, of course, help out this past year on the audit. So on behalf of Bob and the entire team, I really want to say thank you to the Board of Commissioners, to David, Sally, the entire accounting team, also Chuck and the team over at the DSS department. As a whole, they make our lives much, it just makes it a lot smoother process. They do a really good job at both departments. And so again, I'll just sort of dive into what we did for your audit, and then David will probably cover some of the key financial data. But the audit report, of course, is included in your annual financial statement. And that statement, which I believe you have access to online as a PDF, that's, of course, 240 pages. So just wanted to kind of run through the basic format quickly and then really discuss what we did as your auditors. Your letter of transmittal is on page 10. that's your overall presentation of the statements, and then also the economic climate overview and financial highlights. And then we do get the next section, really page 20, is the independent auditor's report. And it right at the top now, the format has changed recently, and it does lead off with our opinion, which states that based on our audit and the report of the other auditors for the component units, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the county as of June 30, 2023.
That's the
So
important part, Board, that last sentence. Okay. Sorry.
so that's what's known as a clean audit opinion or unmodified opinion. And that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide to you as your external auditors that the financial statements are materially correct. And actually on page 2 of the audit opinion, it actually states what generally accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards require. And those are bullet points there. We are to exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism through the audit. We're to identify and assess your risk of material misstatements and to design our audit procedures specific to those risks. And they include examining on a test basis the financial transactions, meaning we do confirmations, we do test of details, we do a lot of analytical testing. And again, that's based on our risk assessment by financial statement, assertion, and area. We also are required to obtain an understanding of your internal controls and design our audit procedures based on that understanding. And then we are required to evaluate your accounting policies that are both new and existing, and we're to review your accounting estimates. And the new accounting standard this year, which Dave might mention as well, is the subscription, the right to use assets for subscriptions, which is GASB 96. And if we keep going through your financial statement, the next section is your management discussion and analysis on page 23. That's a narrative that also covers the financial statements, an overview of the financial statements, and some highlights of the fiscal year. And then also it presents a summary of your net position and your change in net position and the county's net position statements. Your footnotes, those begin on page 55. This is the detailed accounting policies for the governmental unit, and also very detailed information on all the major assets, liabilities, deferred inflows, outflows, your revenues and expenses. And again, there is a footnote specific to the software subscriptions on page 67. Your fund statements, those begin on page 128, and that's your individual major and non-major funds. And then your supplemental schedules, that's page 194, which includes your tax collections, which is current year was 99.68%. Then on page 204, you have your statistical section, and this is 10-year comparative data for your benchmarks, financial trends, revenues, debt capacity, demographic, economic information. And then we're back to specific reports for our purposes. On page 226, you have your reports over your compliance over both financial accounting and your major federal and state awards. So this is required. The first report is required if you have funding over $100,000. That's the internal controls over your financial reporting. That's what's referred to as a yellow book audit. And again, based on our testing, there were no findings, no issues, a clean opinion based on our testing of your budget amendment process, your payroll, your general expenditures, and also your revenues and deposit testing that we did. And then the second and third report in this section are your compliance and internal control reports over your federal major programs and also your state major programs. You had over $10 million in federal funding, and 17.9 million in state funding. And so we are required to test certain programs based on our calculations. And so that this year was the medical assistance, the Medicaid program, your public assistance beach nourishment program, but were your federal programs tested. And then you had several state grants that we looked at, including beach nourishment and the dredging. So again, no findings, no compliance issues were reported. And again, the testing we did both at DSS and in the accounting department, both really did good work. And so that's our reports reflect that. And the very last section of the ACFR is your schedule of federal and state awards. That's on page 235. And again, that shows that you had federal awards of 10 million and state awards of 17.9 million. And that, respectful of your time, and again, David and I will both sort of report separately here, but I wanted just to cover exactly what the audit entails and then the results of the fiscal audit and the compliance audits. Are there any questions for the audit side?
I'll ask the board if they have any questions.
I do not. We had a pretty thorough review in the audit committee. We chatted, obviously, previously to this, and as chair of that committee, I found no issues, and I'm very pleased, Dave, you, your team, our auditors, thank you. Job well done. And I have no other issues.
It was emailed, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Dave.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
While Matt's getting the PowerPoint up, I was in a meeting on December, I think it was 14th, and the state treasurer's office said, well, I'll back up. Technically, our due date's October 31st, and there is not a county in the state. Well, there were, I think, 2 small ones that met that deadline. The real deadline is December 1st. If you don't get it in on December 1st, you got to come back to the board and amend your audit contract. But they said as of December 1st, there were 26 counties that had turned in their 23 audit, and there were still 5 that had not done their 22. So it's just getting harder and harder. That's not about us so much, but it's just getting harder and harder to do. Okay. I also say on the very first page, you've got the location of the report. It's just the county website, departments, finance, annual comprehensive report. Tell you what, I'll go ahead and talk some while he's working, and we'll catch up on the slides.
Okay.
Just some reminders, and I tried to keep this brief because this is 240 pages. We actually managed to decrease it by 7 pages, even though the new standard that Dan mentioned, the GASB 96 on software subscriptions, added 6 pages to the report. So
this is your county efficiency committee in action right there. Pulled 7 pages out of this. Thank you.
Well, yeah. And all that's about is there's no such thing as leases anymore. They're right to use assets. So instead of what you pay for the software is not the budget. And you book a right to use asset and a liability for future payments, which offset, and you amortize that asset against the liability. And I can't imagine how a lot of places have implemented this stuff. You still have 35 funds in total. We did get rid of one, which was the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, or Resiliency and Recovery, because the grant was over. But we did add the Stormwater Fund. And I wanted to remind that the general fund, you have 6 funds that make up your general fund. We have sub-funds. One's the operating fund, That's the one we spend the most of the time on the budget for, but you also have capital investment, the one where we pay the law enforcement officer separation allowance out of, home health and hospice, which was the restricted and the unrestricted money from the sale of the certificate of need. You created the stormwater fund during 23, and the community housing is the money you had set aside for the Woda Cooper project. And that's part of this general fund because that's a decision the board made. Is not restricted from an outside law or an outside revenue restriction. We have to show major funds, which meet certain tests, and they get presentations up in the front of the report. That's the general fund, beach nourishment, the housing fund, which is the state money, and capital projects, since we've been so active.
We have a paper copy. We're following along.
There's some good info in here. I mean, here it is.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. Will you get on my, well, you don't know where to find it. We move on or email it to them?
Well, we got a paper copy.
Okay.
We got a paper
Okay.
copy.
All right, no problem. You have several special revenue funds. Again, the difference between those are that they have an external restriction, either say by state or federal law, or a restriction on what the revenue has to be used for, so they can't go in your general fund. Revenues for the year, I included a 10-year chart. The main things I wanted to mention is occupancy tax went up by 2.38%. The local sales tax, 3.66%. The statewide sales tax is still very elevated, was 8.38%. The land transfer tax went down 37.47%, but that was after, you can see the last 3 years, over the last 3 years, including that decrease, it's a 95% increase.
Astronomical almost.
Right. And then taxable retail sales in the county for those 12 months ended were almost $2.4 billion. Then on the next page, we compared those revenue growths to inflation, which for the 12 months ended June 30th was 3%. The only thing to note there was that the occupancy tax the growth in the occupancy tax was less than the inflation increase. Some items I wanted to note, our governmental debt as a percentage of the assessed property value was 0.75%. Rating agencies think anything less than 1% is very good. Your sales to assessment ratio, that's the North Carolina Department of Revenue comes every July and takes a sample. And according to their sample, in July of 22, the tax values were 79.11% of the sales values. I just checked this morning, they just posted
22, Dave?
22, they just posted the 23 today, and it's 63.2%.
Okay, that has.
As of last July.
Big implications. Would you explain what those implications?
Well, when you do revaluation, they're saying right now the valuation would change by 27% increase. Well, the difference is
37%.
37, you're right, sorry.
37%. What does that mean? I own a house and it was valued at $500,000 at the last assessment. What would that mean? My house is up almost 40%.
On average, everything would go up 37%.
Almost 40%.
On average.
Uh-oh.
You'll have differences.
Uh-oh.
The general fund unassigned fund balance, that's the fund balance that's free and clear for you to do anything you want to with, ended the year at 33.89%. The prior year was 34.5%, but that decrease was mainly a result of revenue growth, which is what you divide the fund balance by. Then the next page is the available fund balance in the general fund was $59.6 million, and that's a rating agency's measure because North Carolina has this thing called, there's a state law called reserved by state statute. No other state has it. So when you go to the rating agencies, they take reserved by state statute and unassigned, and that's what they use. We had dredge loan forgiveness for the year of $1,797,493. You completed 6 beach nourishment projects. Education, local current expense was the highest county in the state, 19 of the last 21 years.
How much approximately was that, Dave? Do you recall the round number? It's a loaded question, I remember.
Local,
It's around $26 million.
5,000-ish.
It's $26 million on average, which is over 5,000 a student. It's pretty good, Mary Helen.
25%, isn't it?
No,
About 30,
Yes,
30,
30.
37?
Okay.
Yeah.
keep going. Yeah,
It's
37.
B's got it. It's close to 37%.
and that was never lower than second behind Orange County.
Right.
Then the water system, the automated meter reading system was almost complete as of June. I know Bobby and I met last week or week before last with water where they've started the AMI, which is the remote reading on a test basis. We issued debt for EMS construction for Southern Shores, which we'll have in our hands in February. Dare Mid-Flight will be late April, maybe May. And Killville Hills, the joint station, August to September.
Dave, do you recall, refresh my memory, I know we have it, what were the rough number of the 2023A LOBs, the bonds? Do you remember the amount, the total we issued? No, I'm not trying to stump you here. I was just trying to refresh my memory.
I'm going to give you a wrong number, and I should know as much as I've worked on it.
I should know, too. I mean, we've talked about it, and I should know, and I just forgot.
I
Okay.
apologize.
All right, we'll get it later. It's all right. I was just trying to refresh my memory.
All right. The certificate from the GFOA, this was their 32nd year. That's on page 8 of the audit. As Dan mentioned, the clean audit and opinion. And then he mentioned the grant work that they have to do. And he said, no grant findings, no question cost. And we kept them busy last year in that they had to audit 3 federal programs, which were major, and that's a threshold of $750,000 or more. That was Medicaid, and then the FEMA grants for Buxton Beach Nourishment, one from Dorian and one from Florence, and we have closed both of those out. Then on the state side, it's more than $500,000 or $500,000 or more, and they had to do 7 of those. Medicaid.
We're moving along here, guys. We're on the slides aren't numbered. It's called Items to Note Major State Programs, right?
6.
All right.
Page 6.
Yeah.
Then 2 for North Carolina Emergency Management, which that's the state share of the FEMA projects for Buxton Beach Nourishment. Again, one from Dorian and one from Florence. North Carolina Division of Water Resources, one for Island H modification grant and one for the dredging loan forgiveness. And then we had 2 grants, one for from NCDQ, one for Buxton Beach Nourishment, one for Avon Beach Nourishment. And then quickly, grand total fund balance of governmental funds was $225 million, and I provided a table of what fund they were from, what type of fund it is, and the amount. And then if you go down 2 slides, one thing I tried to do differently is show those fund balances based on where they come from. Out of that $225 million, 117 of it from operations. You had almost $50 million of unspent debt proceeds from the EMS lobs, beach nourishment debt, sanitation trucks, and some equipment financings in the capital investment fund. The forgivable dredge loans down to about 13.5, probably a little bit less than that. 10.5 for housing, 27 reserved for capital. The change in the general fund, you started off the year with a total fund balance of $59.6 million. You ended the year with $67.9, an increase of about $8.3 million. You'd moved money during the year. You know, we had revenues of $124 million, expenditures of $102. As we normally do, $10.4 million capital investment fund. Then we moved money to specific funds for inlet maintenance, law enforcement, C&D, and E911. You created the Stormwater fund, added money to inlet maintenance, and $500,000 to capital projects for pickleball courts. Again, most revenues were over budget. The one that hadn't been mentioned yet is building permits at almost an 8% increase. It wasn't an increase in the number of permits, it was an increase in the dollar value. The number was about the same. And again, the registered deed fees, not again, but registered deed fees decreased by 36.46%, which was almost exactly the decrease in the land transfer tax. Right. And that's really an infinite increase in investment earnings. We had investment earnings of $2.4 million after a loss in the prior year from, again, unrealized book. We have to book mark to market as at each June. One thing that was very different than prior years, your expenditures in the general fund were 11.1% under budget. That's normally 5% or less. Most of that came from salaries and fringes. It's not turnover like the 2 years before, but there still are vacancies. The other thing affecting that is purchase orders. We're having, even in operations, we're having a lot of purchase orders for items that have been ordered or services that have been ordered but not delivered before June 30th. And that, just in the general fund operations, is 1.8 million. I think overall it was around, almost 6 million for all funds. And a lot of that was capital. And then finally, Dan mentioned one thing. There's some statements up front, it's page 30 and 31, that are the full accrual, where it takes everything and it puts it into two pots, one for business type, which is water, and one's everything else. And you have to book everything, just like you're doing a corporate statement. And we've always told everybody, they don't mean a lot when you try to compare county to county, especially between states, because there's so many things you do differently. We have a health department. A lot of others don't have a health department, the way other states treat schools. But there's one sentence in there that says if you look at that measure over time, it might give indications of how things are going or what you're doing. And the point is we started in 2017 because that was that word again, GASB, 69 and 75, those were pensions and the retiree health. Those were the first years you had to book those. And at that point, we had a negative net position of $200 million, which again, for a county in North Carolina is not, that's a pretty normal thing to have a negative number. Part of that is because of schools. A county issues the debt and records the liability, but the county doesn't own the building, so they don't record the asset. So the difference between the blue bar and the green line is school debt. So it was negative 200 million in 2017, but around 140 if you take out the effect of that school debt. But as you can see, it is improved over time, so that at around 65, 70 million at the end of 23. If you take out the school debt, it's around 50 million. And that's a change to note that, 2017 was, we still hadn't recovered from that recession, and it has gradually gotten better to better financial position. Other things to note for the future is the C&D landfill fund. We've started putting a transfer in there every year. That's for closure costs, because those are real closure costs. As you close out those sales, you have to cover, and then you got to do 20 years of monitoring and maintenance. The sanitation fund had a slight decrease in fund balance, but that was a delivery of truck timing. Had a kind of an artificial increase in 22 and an artificial decrease in 23 because 22 trucks got delivered in 23. The home health and hospice certificate of need money, I'm going to bring you an agenda item in the future to transfer that to the unrestricted portion to the actual general fund.
Why were we having that in a separate fund? Was that
when we did the sale?
No, I remember that.
To keep it separate, if you needed or wanted a separate use for it. but now the unrestricted amount, and it's kind of funny because that's one, we only have 4 comments on the last year's report, and that was one of them. And they said, you can't have unassigned fund balance in a fund that's not the general fund. And we said, that's part of the general fund. There's 6 funds that make up the general fund. And they said, well, it doesn't say general fund. So it shows it the same way this year, because I'm right. And that's all the items I wanted to note. The last page gives you that gives you a reference of where everything is in the report and the page numbers. But as Dan mentioned, the stat sections, if you need to look up anything or need any information, there's 10 years of just about everything in there.
All right, well, thank you, Dave. We appreciate it. County Manager, are we close to moving into closed session?
Yes, sir. I was going to suggest that. One thing I want to add, we got an excellent financial statement, and you all know that. You've seen it, and we've talked about it, and it doesn't happen by accident. Dave and his team do a great job keeping up with that, but it goes beyond just Dave and his team. There's not a staff meeting that we've had since I've been here, I don't think, that we don't talk about the budget, and we don't talk about managing the budgets, and we don't talk about doing the right things. And so when we have spending that's less than what we budgeted, then it's on purpose. It's because our department heads work really hard to make sure that we do that and we do things efficiently that way. And then you all have a part because we budget very conservatively, and we make sure that we aren't overextending ourselves and getting too far out there. So all those things together with Dave and his team, with the work that you do and the work that our department heads do, really make us have these things. And I'm really proud of the work that they all do to make that happen. So I want to let them know that publicly and remind you once again the hard work they do. With that said, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
we need a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the county in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to discuss the O'Hare matter as well as to discuss the PFAS matter.
all right. I have a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Couch and Bateman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner House. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. That motion, Ms. Clerk, is Couch and Bateman, and second House. Thank you. We'll call the Dare County Board of Commissioners meeting back to order, and I'll turn it over to the county manager.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In the closed session, the board approved the minutes of the last closed session, gave the attorneys guidance with regard to the O'Hare matter, and authorized the county manager to enter into a legal services agreement with Barron and Budd and other law attorneys to join the class action with regard to the PFAS lawsuit settlement that's a nationwide settlement. Just so people don't get nervous or worried, I'll talk a little bit about what that means. PFAS is it's polyfluoroalkali or something to that nature. It's a chemical that's widespread. There's thousands of things that make that, and it's in everything. And there's been a class action lawsuit filed nationwide that I think has been settled, and there's a pool of money out there that we have an opportunity to participate in a fairly small way. What that would mean is that if we found that we had a PFAS problem anywhere with that chemical and anything that we do, then we would have a source of some amount of money to try to help remedy whatever that problem was. We test our water, and that would be the most common place you'd look the first time. We've tested our water. We don't have those issues in our water. We have RO plant water in the RO system. Even if it was in the water, if it was in the groundwater, it would come out in the RO system. So there are no PFAS problems in that, but as an abundance of caution and to be sure that if funds become available and to be sure that if we had an opportunity to receive some of that money, that we're in the pool, then we've engaged, this law firm to make sure we're in the pool, and that's really all that we're doing. And so you all had authorize that in the closed session, you now have to approve that in the open session.
We need that
You
motion?
need a motion, yes.
Okay. Who'd like to entertain that motion?
So moved.
Vice Chairman, is a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
All right. And that brings us to item 12, and I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Item 12 is what we try to make our annual update to your set of financial policies, and a lot of these items are catch-ups, prior misses. A couple of examples are cleanup. We put in the policy that we'll follow general accepted accounting principles. Well, we don't have a choice, so we took stuff like that out. It's not up to us. There's another one, a really old one, where the rating agencies wanted to say you needed 5 board votes to budget more than 3% of the fund balance. Well, the reality is you could just do it with 4 to change the policy and then vote to do it with 4 votes. So we took that out. Monthly reports to the manager, we used to actually print them out, and now what we do, we've got an intranet website where, with the help of IT, those get posted every day, we call it the manager's dashboard. So we took those out and made those kind of changes. There are 2, I think, substantive changes in here. One is your PDF page 85, which is behind the cover sheet, on your general fund unassigned fund balance, to change that percentage or the minimum target percentage from 21% to 25%. It's something we've talked about in budget workshops, and I think I'm speaking for the chairman of the audit committee, although I forgot to bring it up to the audit committee, that it's the recommendation of the manager and myself, and I think Commissioner Ross is in agreement, to change those numbers from 21% to 25%. In terms of dollars, it'd take your unassigned fund balance per the policy from $25.8 million to $30.8 million, and reduce the amount over that 25% and then again, this is at June 30th, from 15.9 to 10.9 million. The second substantive change is actually related to investments. I just looked these up. In November 2012, we had an investment portfolio of $79 million. In November of 2020, we had 184, and last month we ended the month at 240 million. I can't buy pieces of investments of $1 million anymore. We've got to do 2 or 3 at a time, and our policy says the most we can own of any one commercial paper issuer is 3 million. North Carolina law says you have to have the highest rating, which commonly is known as A1, P1, F1. They can have a plus, which is an extra, higher rate. It's just like your debt rating. Instead of AA, it's AAA, or instead of AA plus, it's AAA. What this change says is if they have 2 of those pluses, we could own 5 million instead of 3 million. Because what we've gone to, we're buying in batches of 3 million at a time instead of 1 million. There's very few of those issuers that are available. I listed the names. There's about 9 of them. So again, I can cover any of these items that you might have questions about, but those are the 2 major ones.
Dave,
So you need a motion to update these county financial policies?
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Is anyone prepared to make that motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by the vice chairman.
Second.
Been seconded by Commissioner Basnight. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Dave.
That brings us to item 13, and this is the Stormwater Master Plan. And while Barton is coming up for that presentation, I'll answer Duke's questions really fast, and then you all can get into the meat of the presentation. The purpose of this plan was we had stormwater issues some years ago, and we attacked those stormwater issues to try to solve problems. We pumped water here. We got a grant to do some work up on the north end to improve drainage and to try to help solve some problems, those kind of things like that. And it became apparent that we were kind of going after these things as they came up, rather than having some kind of comprehensive look to see where we needed to be putting our money, to see what our priorities were. Are there places that are better and worse than where we were actually putting our money? And so we asked that we get this stormwater plan done, and you all agreed to pay for that, or we got a grant to pay for that, I think. Barton got a grant to pay for that, to go in and look at where the stormwater problems are, and then to try to set some priorities so that as grant dollars come available, or as county dollars become available, we know where to put those dollars, and we're not just, whacking a mole. We're actually have a plan and an idea about how to go about handling this. This isn't intended to create new rules, new regulations, new anything. It's a way for us to go out and say, we put in some money with a grant on the north end, but we also have problems here. Where do we put the next grant? Where do we spend our money the next time we get an opportunity to spend money? And this is to help you all make those decisions. That's really the only purpose for that. So all the concerns you were concerned about aren't part of what this is about. This is about us addressing stormwater infrastructure and having something that we can go to when the time comes to say, we have a plan, here's what our priority is, you have money available, help us meet these priorities. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to you. I hope I haven't stolen all your thunder.
Pretty much stole everything. Happy New Year. So like Bobby mentioned, we did get a FEMA flood mitigation assistance grant to update this 2001 Stormwater Master Plan. In addition, 2 designs were developed. What North Carolina Emergency Management noticed was that communities were not applying for construction grants, mostly because just to apply for a construction grant, you need designs, engineering, and that by itself can cost $50,000. So what they wanted to do was encourage communities to apply for these FEMA flood mitigation assistance grants to do all this modeling and identify projects and do designs, do that front end work, so you can use them to apply for future FEMA grants. Withers Ravenel was the selected consultant, and so I'll get right to Dory and let him introduce himself and also do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Barton.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, Mr. Manager, and staff. And well, first, my name is Dory Saba. I am the Director of Stormwater at Withers Ravenel, and we're glad to be able to present for you the findings of this study. And first, I would like to second what the manager just said. I want to laud the Commissioner and the county for taking a proactive approach at handling stormwater rather than the reactive approach of just dealing with what problems occur and how to deal with them. And that is the purpose of this exercise in here, the Stormwater Management Plan. It's a long-range roadmap planning exercise that will allow you to know what kind of issues exist, what are some potential solutions, and also address some sources of funding. And this will be a document that can be used to apply for funding. Usually you need something to support any funding application. So that is the overall idea. I think if we can have the presentation. Here it is. So first slide in here is about the purpose and objective. We mentioned it's just a roadmap, long-term planning about what are the existing issues, whether known by the public, and whether we can put it in an engineering model such that we can validate what's in the existing condition and use it to propose some alternatives. And it encompassed the entire unincorporated county area, so we did not leave an area. We modeled various regions of the county. The scope included Barton and the county in here. They were clear that we need plenty of public input to gather the information about what is seen during storm events or others and what kind of problems are there. So we did plenty of public meetings and to assess it. And then we did a review of the entire regulations of what exists in the county, federal, state regulations, to adhere with them. And we built some engineering models to see the existing conditions, that they mimic what we see on the ground, and we can target a certain level of service and designs in them. From that, we propose some alternatives and what could be done to remedy the problems that we're seeing, evaluated some costs associated with each one of them, and the overall is an updated master plan that the county will have. It can be used as opportunities for future grants, like we mentioned before, and there are some state and federal money that can be applied for. Public events, we had some stakeholders meetings, public meetings, both online and surveys, and we gathered some of the information. The goal from these meetings was to check for what are the areas of concerns, what people are seeing, and also for us to propose solutions. We wanted to see what is acceptable to the public and what is the feedback. Overall, there was no surprises. The main problems are flooding concerns that the public mentioned, and some of the ocean overwash also was ranked up high, but that's the overall. In total, we had over 800 responses from the public meetings, and
Wait, you said you had public meetings with how many responses?
the online one, 800. Over
800. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah. And the stakeholders was separate, but we had stakeholders meeting. It was attended by environmental associations, home builders associations,
Wait,
associations.
The Home Builders Association was there?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Association of Realtors was there also. So we had a lot of input, and two in-person surveys also were conducted, other than the online survey, to identify all this. And overall, I mean, the acceptance of the various programs that were considered generally tended to be from positive agree to strongly disagree. It wasn't surprising that all was on the positive aspects, and one item that was on the neutral, and that's the average of
The fees.
the fees, and not surprisingly, and really the average does not tell much, because you could have ice cold water and boiling water. The average does not tell you much. So we did take a look further at what can be done with the fees, and that's what the slide in here. It was the most scattered response. It's about a third, a little over a third, that are in the agree to strongly agree. Slightly below that is the disagree or strongly disagree with it. And you have the average part, the middle in there, that is circled, the unsure or don't have an opinion about it. And really what this says is, in case any fee is to be considered or not, and this might not be the way, it's not said that we have to put a fee or anything to fund the programs, continuing with the public outreach that the county is already doing would be suggested. Plenty of public engagement to see what is acceptable, what is not, and how things can be done. As far as the existing conditions, I mean, we saw plenty of the survey that came up about what people are seeing as the problems are, and also what we were able to assess in the field conditions. We did several field trips at several locations, and then we ran some engineering models for the area that need to be modeled in there. There's limited infrastructure, and a lot of the infrastructure, some of it is private and DOT roads. The county does not own them, so it's not something that the county has direct control on. Ocean overwash is a big item that can silt up and fill ditches that drain this and require plenty of maintenance. And a lot of the area, the topography is what it is, and there's a high groundwater table, so there's no place for the water to go per se, and these are the main ones. On the programmatic aspect, we looked at the local ordinances and what can be done, and design manuals, and how to assess the overall development aspect within the county. With that, we identified about 8 areas of concerns in terms of engineering solutions, and they are distributed throughout the country. And on the mainland communities, mainly Mans Harbor and Stumpy Points, that's a location where the groundwater and the topography are concerns, and more of trying to have open conveyance and clearing up ditches and maintenance and the closed culvert would help in alleviating that flooding or helping it recede much quicker than that, than it does now. And you can see there are some big numbers with the money, with some of the projects that are going to solve some of the solutions. Total, it's about 10 to 15 million for all of them. Just budgetary numbers in here. Couple of programmatic items that are mentioned in there is a stormwater management program, and then looking at an inventory of the entire system of what's in there to be able to improve the models and further provide different solutions and doing survey and things. Two of the areas were selected to advance them a little past the study only, so we did a 30% design plans, we call it. That's something where we'll have some plan and profile, put something to identify potential conflicts and where things can go. And there were two other areas that were done before under a separate funding program. It's called RCCP, Resilient Coastal Community Program. So this was a separate grant that the county received and did a couple of the studies for them. Additional items could be some potential for low impact development and homeowner solution. And then here we were clear from the beginning during the study is the area is almost developed, so we don't want the remaining properties to have to take the burden of everything else and cost them everything. So it could be that there are solutions for proposed improvements and even some incentives for existing property owners of what they can do or not. So there are various options that the county could consider and have a study about it so that it's not that any new development will have to carry the weight or the burden from what exists already in the ground. And there could be an option to adopt some future ordinance or study an ordinance and dedicate a certain amount of the funding that the county has for stormwater. The other thing would be to pursue additional grants and go after monies that is available. I know the county submitted for other grants as part of to support these plans. And the good thing is in the funding environment now, the ARPA money is it's practically depleted. So there isn't a lot of ARPA money that is being spent as terms of grant, but the state is given money under the LASSI program, and that's before all the state money was for water quality. This LASSI program is mainly for flooding, and they are starting to fund it hopefully year after year. So this past year, what we submitted for was for flooding problems, and it was funded through the state. And with that, I'd like to thank you again, and if anyone has any questions for me about the plan, glad to answer.
Anybody have any? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So with the implementation of, you got $13 million worth of projects here, looks to me like majority of those will probably be on DOT right away. So how do we work with them through what you guys are doing to make sure those things are done?
Yeah.
And is DOT's money going to pay for it?
I'll start from the last one. It's easy. The DOT will not pay for it. They expect the county most likely if it's stormwater improvement like this. But there are ways to get an encroachment agreement. They expect the county to run the project, and they get to approve it as in terms that it meets their standards and does not cause adverse impact to the road itself or some safety hazard, and that's nature. But we did not identify any DOT money where DOT has to do these projects that are within the right of way. But there would be some need for encroachment agreements.
So DOT, we've talked with DOT multiple times over the years, and their position is that they build their drainage projects to handle the runoff from the roads. Their drainage projects aren't intended to be the stormwater system for the neighborhoods and the communities and the things, and so they're not designed to take those volumes of water. They're designed to take the runoff from the road. However, where we can enhance those things, they will allow us to do that. They'll give us the encroachment agreements to do that, but they aren't allowed to fund it because it's not necessary, again, to take the runoff from the road. And so we seek grants to go out and do that. We're working on a grant right now at the north end to do exactly that, to work in the right-of-way to move some of that water. They're with us. They're going to work with us. We've talked to them. They know what's happening. If we get the grant funding, then we'll work with them and we'll put in that infrastructure with the grant funding. It'll be enlarged to take, again, it's got to continue to maintain what flows off the roads, but it'll then take on whatever other water we designed the project to take on from the adjoining neighborhoods. And so they're not opposed to it. They're not against us. They'll help us, but they won't fund it because it exceeds what their authority is, because they're not intending to do drainage for the whole community.
Right. I was down at Avon this past weekend, and a lot of those ditches down there, and then, of course, going towards Rodanthe and Waves and everywhere else, Salvo, they're grassed up. A lot of them are filled in. Some cases, property owners fill them in to put sprinkler systems, so.
Well, and quite frankly, we've had some conversations with DOT about, forget what we want to do, what are you doing to maintain what you have? Because if you maintain what you had, then some of these problems would go away because it would hold the water. Again, they default back to, when we have rains of this volume, it's not designed to take it. When we have rains of the volume that it's designed to take, then it works for the purpose of taking the water off the road. And so getting them to improve, that's difficult.
One of the, your recommendations, stormwater management ordinance. We have some things in place now, right, Barton? Relative to stormwater management ordinances?
We follow the state's regulations.
Okay, that's intriguing, kind of intriguing to me. Looking at this, it's with your what you're recommending here, and this whole presentation is looks like Dare County's going to have to step it up a little bit. A lot of this is on some of the stuff that was state managed. Now, I think I see, if I'm looking at this stuff correct, is that Dare County is going to be more hands-on with our stormwater management. Is that a right observation, Barton?
I mean, where they're driving out, put in some recommendations of options if the board would want to move forward with that in the future. But again, that would require some more studies and
Right.
it wasn't part of the actual grant to change anything currently.
Okay.
As I said when we started this, we had, I think at some of our workshops and maybe at some of our budget workshops, we talked about stormwater and some of the problems we were having and all that. And again, we didn't really know where to go or what to do. We didn't have a plan in place. We didn't really know where all the hotspot issues were. And, you know, in the middle of the budget season, we'd have a problem somewhere and we'd go scramble around to try to find some money to fix a problem. And what we need is a plan, and then we can set aside, we've created a stormwater fund, and we can fund that stormwater line, and we can use that line to do as much as that line will do in any particular budget year. But we have a plan, we have a funding source, whatever it is we determine that to be, and we have the opportunities for grants so that we can methodically go through this. We're not going to solve the stormwater problems next budget cycle. This is going to be multiple years, decadal maybe even, to acquire the funds and all that's necessary to solve many of these problems. But you got to start somewhere, and so this is our start. Let's start moving in that direction. When you start looking at recommending ordinance changes and all that, what we found in Dare County when I was representing Kitty Hawk, what we found in Kitty Hawk is those ordinances are like squeezing a balloon. You can create an ordinance that solves this problem, and the next thing you know, you've created 5 more. And so you've got to be really careful, which is I think what Duke was trying to tell us this morning, about what you do with your ordinances, because if we're 95% built out, then you can't make it where the rest of the folks dump all their water on whoever else, but at the same time, you can't make them change the house they already built. And so you have problems regulating your way out of it, which is not what our goal was. Our goal was to go through and try to start finding ways we could get grant money and do infrastructure things that would help solve some of those problems.
No, thanks for that, because there's a whack-a-mole element to it, and we talk about it in fisheries all the time. Here, we're trying to, the state is trying to manage fisheries, but sometimes the solution, or the solution is worse than the problem.
Brian, we'll talk about this,
That's not even there yet.
CIP, but there's 8 areas listed here in this chart. And I didn't total up the money, but it's obviously substantial. But when applying for grants, are the grants normally defined for a grant like this? Are they normally out there saying, at a federal level, let's say, there's $100 million here and you can apply for all or part of it? How does that necessarily work?
So they identify a pot of money, and then you can go in, and sometimes there's limits on how much you can get. And then sometimes there aren't limits, but Barton is good at it, and he talks with the folks, and they say, look, the limit might be $1 million, but they're only going to give you 300, so find a 300 section you can do and do that. And so Barton works through that system to maximize what we can get in the grant funding and take it as far as we can take it.
Is that something we could kind of employ and get Barton to come to the CIP and kind of walk through some of that? What I'm after is kind of like what you said a while ago. It may be a decade to get all of this done, but if we can have an idea of because it all comes down to the money, it looks like, and plan it out with.
Well, the problem is we don't know what grants dollars are going to be there. And so what you got is, let's just say you got a $50 million project, or $50 million problem if all of it's together.
Yeah.
Then how much of that are we willing to take on over what period of time that we then supplement with whatever grants are available that then changes our timeline based on the grant availability?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of what your plan is.
Is there, Barton, is there any kind of guesstimate as to how often they make these grants available? Is it a yearly basis or?
It's usually a yearly basis. There have been more grants recently that are like 90% or even 100% coverage by the grant entity. Golden Leaf can be 100%. They do like some match, but Golden Leaf just increased their grant amount from $250,000 to $1 million in this cycle. He talked about Lassie. Lassie had local assistance for stormwater improvement, somewhere around there. And that had like something upwards towards like 100 million last year.
Last year it was the ARPA money was about 80 million. This year it's 16 million.
Yeah, 16. So it dropped by 60 million this year compared to last year. So it does fluctuate, but that is 100% by the state for that grant. So there are more where it might not even have to take much out of our stormwater fund to do these kind of projects. There are some that are 10%.
I mean, obviously you have to prioritize them in some fashion.
One of the purposes of having the fund is he didn't have anywhere to get matching money. We get a grant, and if we don't have a line item set aside for stormwater, then we're going into the contingency or some other area in the general fund to take some money out to create that match. And so we created a fund, much as we did with the dredge fund, that we have a way to match grants that we can get so that we can qualify for those and get some of this work done.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's fickle with these grants. I mean, they can tell you, yeah, but then get the money is a whole nother animal sometimes.
I have a question about the plan. You identified areas throughout the county that are addressed in your plan with the amount it would take to remedy some of the stormwater flood problems. I know there have been recent concerns about areas such as Doe's Creek on Roanoke Island. Is the plan fluid? I mean, can we add things to the plan as we go through, and different problems that come up that maybe were not identified in all in your public research and people responding to your questions?
So the answer is yes. We can always add to it. Your problem, if it's going to be a problem, is how do you prioritize it? And we've got more plans than we got dollars, or more problems than we got dollars. So as you add to it, where do you add it in the list of priorities? And part of the reason to have the professionals do it so that we weren't doing it based on who was screaming the loudest. We were doing it based on where that need actually was.
In reading through it, it sounded like that to me.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Nice work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do need That could
You-
be adopted if.
Yeah, you need a motion to adopt the master plan.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion on the floor by Commissioner Couch. It's been seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jim, that brings us to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes from December 4th. We have the tax collector's report. We have the McGuire Woods consulting contract. We have the Dare County Transportation Title 6 policy update. We have the emergency management budget amendment, a Parks and Recreation budget amendment, Department of Health and Human Services, Health Division, lead and asbestos inspection funding, Department of Health and Human Service, Public Health Division, NENC PPH Public Health Workforce Grant, and Department of Health and Human Services, Public Health Division, Vehicle Lease Agreement with Port Health.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion on the floor by Commissioner Bateman to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
That brings you to item 15, which is your board appointments. First, you have the Older Adult Services Board. Due to the passing of Commissioner Tobin, the board needs to appoint a commissioner to fill that unexpired term.
Yeah, there's still some not contingencies, but some concessions that Commissioner Tobin brought to our attention with respects to training, litigation, and all that stuff. I don't know that that's been resolved, and I've not had a chance to pick my fellow commissioners about whether or not they might want to serve on that. So
I don't know if that's the same board.
is it not? It's not the same board?
That's,
I think that's
Is
the
that the
nursing home
advisory?
advisory
Okay.
board you're talking
My-
about.
I confused them as well.
I
Mr.
did.
Chairman.
Sorry, I
do.
got them
I do the
confused.
same.
Confused them too. Once again, I haven't reached out to my fellow commissioners to see who would take that. If anybody's interested, speak up. I don't see anybody knocking my door down to serve on it. So
I'll ask the clerk to add that to the next.
yeah,
agenda.
just add it to the next gen. We'll have more discussions about it.
Next is the Tourism Board. For the town of Southern Shores, the town has designated the following nominees in order of preference to replace outgoing Councilman Leo Heilman. Their first preference is Mark Baitnick. Their second is Mayor Pro Tem Matt Neal, and their third is Mayor Elizabeth Morey.
Motion to appoint Baitnick.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner House. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And then for the town of Kill Hills, Ivy Ingram's term has expired and she's not eligible for reappointment. The town has designated the following nominees in order of preference. Commissioner Terry Gray, Commissioner Bernard B.J. McAvoy, and Mayor John Winley.
Move to appoint Commissioner Gray.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Couch to appoint Terry Gray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman and Commissioner Bass Knight. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And then your upcoming board and committee appointments, you have in February, you have 2 terms expiring on the Planning Board. In March, you have 1 term expiring on the Older Adult Services Advisory Council. And in April, you have 1 term on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council and 2 terms on the Mans Harbor Marina Commission. And that would be your agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. That brings us to item 16. And I'll go back to you, County Manager. Do you have anything?
Yes, sir, I have a few things.
Be careful.
You almost got him.
Be careful.
Don't want to go down that rabbit hole but once. First, I sent you all a letter earlier. It was a copy of a letter that the Waterways Commission sent with regard to the realignment of Sloop Channel from the ferries down south. We've been asked for the board to do a similar letter. We've prepared a similar letter for the signature over the chairman's signature, and I need your approval to send that letter.
Move to approve.
Motion on the floor by the vice chair. It's been seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
The second thing I want to talk to you about, and just, I think I sent you some information we got from Oakley Collier with regard to the early college and the cost of renovation of that building, which is significantly more than what we had in mind.
No, stop.
You know, what we had thought, what we had hoped was that I get my directions wrong, the eastern building, the easternmost building, we could just use sort of as is without having to do a lot to it and bring the early college in with the first couple of years and then renovate the other side over time. What we found when we went in there is that really to make the east side usable was a couple $1 million. I mean, it's expensive, a lot more expensive than we thought to do that. And so if we're going to try to do that and open in this fall as we had planned, then you all almost have to approve it right now in order for us to get the plans drawn, the bidding done and all that, in hopes that we could start maybe by May, and with hopes that if we started in May, they could be finished by September.
2026.
Steve Bassnight says October. So
That's a lot of wishful thinking.
well, that's what I thought too. And so I have contacted the superintendent and talked to him about it, told him what we found and where we are. And ask him to look and see does he have an alternate place that the first class could do that while this is going on, so that we could in fact start in August, even if we weren't in the building until say November or something like that. Or would it be better just to postpone it a year? You can't start it really in mid-year, so to wait and do it in the fall of 2025 and then go through the process more orderly and easily without agreeing to anything. I would say our thoughts between the two of us was much as Commissioner House is that the schedule doing that otherwise is probably more ambitious than we can accomplish. And two, but we didn't make a decision because he doesn't know if we have an alternative place to have it. He was looking to see if that could be accomplished. So I tell you all this just to say we may or may not meet that deadline. And I'm not really in a position to ask you to approve those millions of dollars. I don't know where we think we can get it from well, Dave Mike can get it. We can get it from the lottery fund.
I've heard
That's from
varying numbers. I've heard varying numbers. What is he looking at number-wise students in the beginning of the program?
I think we're talking about 150. That's what I thought I heard him say, and with the goal being 300 and some
Right.
when it's at full capacity.
Is there a potential at COA?
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't looked at that. This came up before he or I have had time to try to find an alternate site. If we're trying to start by August, then Dave's got some numbers. He's got the funding source. I need to get you to say, yeah, if you can make it work, then go. Because if we don't decide it today, then we're going to miss it no matter what. By default, we're not going to have it done by the fall.
Well, I don't recall seeing $2 million worth of
What was the number,
renovation.
Dave? Do you remember?
How about
$2,611,000.
That building's in rough shape.
Total cost all in 17 million even.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's a Taj Mahal. That's building another COA. Tell me what really needs to be done.
What?
You know, I mean, we're talking about tearing that down and building another COA.
What they're telling us, the building on the west side is not capable of being renovated. It's the old skating rink that was built in the 40s, and they've put lipstick on a pig for a lot of years, and it's not structurally something they can go in and improve to make better, and that needs to be torn down and replaced. The other building can stay. It just needs some major work done on the inside of it and on the
Well,
outside of it.
You and I walked through those buildings, Bobby,
I'm telling
with the
well,
prior administration,
That's why.
and we said this
I
would.
walked through it with you. you know,
And, yeah, and
when I was on the Board of Ed.
we said this would work. This blows my mind.
So it sounds to me like the appropriate way to go is to stop. Let's go through the CIP process. Let's look at our alternatives and let's make an orderly decision shooting for the fall of 2025. Because otherwise, we're
Well,
moving.
that's not, I mean, that's fine, but that ain't changing the numbers.
Well, then
It'll only go up.
do we have to make some decisions there as well with us in the school? What are we willing to spend and how much do they actually need to make it work? What we've got is what Oakley Collier says you need to make that meet the needs of the early college.
Can you get a second opinion?
I think we need to study this a little bit more.
Pardon?
I think this needs
I
to be studied.
couldn't agree more. The vice chairman
What'd he say?
just suggested we need to look into this more. And I'm like Commissioner Bateman. We need a second opinion because what they're suggesting, that's equaling another COA, just like we put in Roanoke Island to the tune of $18 million. And that's not what we set aside the Twyford property to do.
Right. Well, we would be building a school basically, and that's
Right.
about what a
That's
school
what
costs now.
Right.
And how does that affect the rest of the budget for the schools? I mean, are they going to want other
So we
things?
talked about that as
I mean,
well. So assuming that we chose to spend the 17 million, the 17 million comes from the lottery fund that's set aside to do
Right.
schools. It doesn't come out of.
It's not, yeah,
Not
that's,
that-
you're going where
not
I'm
the
going.
general
That's
fund.
why I want to hear from
It's
Dave.
not
Right.
coming out of, it's not coming out of the general fund and it's
Right.
not coming out of our
It's
CIP
just-
fund. But what it does do is what I think you're asking is, how does that impact future growth in the school? If we
Right.
put all of our
Back-
lottery money into the early college, what happens if they need a wing at Manio or they need a
Right.
wing
That's
in,
what-
down in Buxton or wherever? I asked about that. There's nothing in their capital improvement plan for the next 5 years that says that they need any of that expansion at all in any of those places. And I asked specifically, has that changed? Does anybody think anything different? The answer is no. I asked on a 10-year horizon, and nobody will give you, I was going to say a straight answer. It doesn't mean, nobody can predict what's going to happen in 10
Well,
years.
no, but they do a projection
But
for,
they were.
for that many
We
years
were under
on
the impression that
enrollment,
even in
yes.
10 years, there wouldn't be a need for school expansion. On the maintenance side, we've already got money budgeted for chillers and roofs and all that stuff. So that's all in a plan and done. So on the surface, it doesn't appear that doing this
It would
would impact, but that's on the surface.
On the surface.
I like the chairman's idea about maybe breaching the subject with COA or even CSI.
Yep. I mean, they've got the room.
See,
And it's nice
CSI's got a
facilities.
ton of room.
Yeah, CSI has
They don't do
room.
anything out there.
I talked to CSI. I sit on that board now, as Vice Chairman Overman did.
About this specifically?
On CSI space and availability, and they are at full capacity
Really?
per Mr. Reed Corbett. Am I wrong, Wally, or am I right?
I think that's right.
That's right.
I hadn't had any late
Full
conversation.
capacity. They are maxed out. As I walk the empty halls, listening to my own voice and heels click on echoes, they are maxed out. I'm just sharing with you that the director shared with me. Dave, when we did the CIP plan, we saw a very large buildup in the school designated fund through lottery and other revenue sources. I'm not asking you to pull it up now, but I seem to recall, you have it?
Yeah.
5 years from now, like 2028, was it not a substantial balance in that fund?
It was.
Well, the key was that it didn't flip to the positive until 2026.
I don't know what that means. That fund was positive now, and it was going to remain
You're
positive.
putting money in this year and 2025 into that school capital reserve fund to cover the balances and all the construction, their CIP, their local capital outlay, and the debt service. Starting in '26, that reverses to a positive number. We're not spending as much
Okay.
as we're bringing in. And yeah, it grows pretty quickly.
That's what I seem to
The
recall.
whole key to it is as long as we could issue the first round of debt after June, after July 1st of '24, and the second round after July 1st of '25, we would only have to use 350,000 of the lottery funds to cover the new debt service in '25, and less than 120,000 in '26, and
Okay,
after
yeah,
that,
that's
it's covered.
granularity that I'm struggling to process here.
Well,
How much is the balance in the school capital fund in '26?
with these, in '26, with these projects, drawing 350,000 out of the lottery money, it would be zero. We would have it
So
covered.
the school capital fund is empty.
Right now. But it grows, like you saw in the model. You're putting $1.6 million into it this year, 645,000 into it next year, and after that, zero.
Well, then $17 million to do this is absurd because there's no money to fund it. You just told me
No,
it's
we
zero.
could, that's how much it grows, because the growth in the restricted sales tax has grown so much. I showed you in the presentation, last year was lower in the statewide sales tax, and that's the part of the restricted portion, is still over 8% a year. So, for example, even with these two projects, by the end of, say, 2030, that fund would have a balance of about $5.5 million.
It's going from zero today, we're gonna spend 17 million, and it's still gonna have 5 million in 2030.
Yes.
So in 7 years, it's putting over $3 million a year into the fund. Okay,
Because of the sales tax growth.
okay.
And the school debt service from 2001 through 2005 going away.
Okay, all right.
So I'm gathering we're not prepared to do anything today. We need to look at this in more detail.
Yeah,
We
this
need
is a
to
big
get-
topic. I mean, you could tell by the dialogue, we got 45 questions going around the table here, so no.
Then I'll get with the superintendent, and maybe we'll get a meeting of our capital improvements committee, the architect, the folks from the schools, and sit down and go through this, and then we'll be in a position to come back to you all as a board and sort of say where we are and what a plan might be, or the lack of a plan, so that we'd maybe, do something different.
And the architect has been chosen. This is the architect, Oakley
Well,
Collier.
it is for now. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, we
These
need,
guys are very good.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They're very,
we
very
we need to hear what they say and why we're
Right.
looking at these kind of costs.
Yeah.
I think the answer is, you got a really old building and you don't want to put lipstick on a pig
Yeah.
to have a headache the rest of your life. If you're going to keep it and use it, then you need to make it where it's stable and
Understand.
suitable and can have a long, useful life.
Yeah, for the amount of funding we're talking about, I just think we need to take a deep breath and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Or
Exactly,
or
not
do
just
you-
Shouldn't be a
not
snap
just jump
decision.
right at it.
Or do you, I mean, the other option you have is to renovate the building that can be renovated at the $2 million cost, and then limit the size of the program to accommodate that building, so that you're
I
not
think
building
that's a
another building.
legitimate option,
Yeah.
So,
even if
but-
it's a,
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
there's options there. We
Yeah.
just got to look
Just
at
gotta
them and
look at all
talk
of
about them
them.
with the schools.
even if you had to do a mix and match, I mean, you
Right.
know, yeah.
So- Okay,
Great.
all right. The next is a heads up, sort of. Our sanitation department, we're struggling with people. And we have 17 driver slots that if we were completely full, we have 3 vacant due to retirement. We have another that we terminated. We have 1 that's relocating. We have 2 that aren't working because of a workers' comp injury. There are 3 more drivers that are 64 years or older that are driving. And we're starting to worry what's going to happen.
I guess,
And-
yeah,
and-
I'm sitting here
Bobby.
starting to break out into a
And-
sweat.
Bobby, what are the total vacancies?
Yeah.
There's 3, 5. I'm trying to find hiring. 3 are vacant due to retirement. 4 is, there was a termination.
7.
5 vacancies.
12.
12.
And then there are 2 more drivers, 7, that are still on the payroll, but they're out on workers' comp. So there's 7
Good.
out of 17 out right as we speak today. And then we have some other drivers that are older that we don't know whether they're going to be
Whether
here a
they're-
year or a month
right.
or 5 years.
Got a lot of people.
Our concern is we're making do when we're getting the trash picked up. Our other concern is we're not sure what's going to happen in July when we're going wide open.
I'm pretty sure I know.
And so we've got to look at.
Bobby don't do
Skylar.
Yeah, right.
Skylar will be driving one truck, Bobby, he'll be driving
That's
another.
right.
Do we have some retirees we can reach out to?
We've got to look at some options of how are we going to do it, be it, do we raise, again, the hiring rate? Our problem today still with our drivers is we're behind the towns in our hiring rate. If we hire them and the town has an opening, we lose them, even with the salary study and the raise we gave them ahead of the salary study.
But we don't ask for a sworn oath of loyalty or
Right.
anything?
No, we don't. And so we have these problems. I'm making you aware, there's no action for you to take. We've looked at, other things. Again, I think
This is just
I need to sit down with Shanna and get a list of options on the table and then come back to you all and have a conversation about it. I just didn't want to spring it on you at some meeting in February, like, oh my gosh, how long have you known this? What's been going on? This is something that Shanna and I have been talking about now for about a month since your last meeting.
Are there a couple of drivers we can identify that maybe have retired recently that we could buy some short-term with?
One of the things we are doing is we started a training program, and much as they do in EMS, if you'll come in and you don't have a CDL license and tell me you're going to work for the county, we'll put you on the payroll at this rate and send you to CDL school and pay you, and you go to CDL school and you get your CDL, and when you get it, then we'll raise you up to the hiring rate with the hope that we can recruit and train people and get them in place as a long-term problem solver. And that can work until somebody retires in an accident and the guy we just trained leaves.
It's gonna come down to the money.
That's right.
If
It's
it comes
definitely
down
to
to
the money.
salary.
That's right.
That's what it's gonna,
That's
I don't
right.
care what you do, it sounds like it
It's gonna
comes
come
down
back
to
to that.
salary.
And so we got to talk about how and what we're going to do there. The chairman and I spent a whole bunch of time trying to analyze what would happen if we went to one pickup a day instead of two. The net result of that is I'll make up a number, there's 10 million tons of trash that got to get picked up. That's X number of loads. Would you pick them up in a day? You can't pick them all up in a day, can you? So you got to get that amount of trash out of there.
Trucks ain't got jets.
And however many trips that takes is however many trips it takes, no matter what days you do it on. So we didn't find a whole lot of savings there, a little bit, but not enough to make it worthwhile and to upset the apple cart. So anyway, those are the issues that we have. I'm making you aware. We'll come back to you with hopefully some options hopefully in February, and then we'll have to make some decisions on what we want to do.
Let's require less trash and garbage.
There you go.
Now, isn't there also some vacancies at the landfill itself?
There are, but those aren't what's pressing at the moment. Getting the guys, because anybody that has a CDL, we try to, if we get in a pinch, drag them off or whatever else they're doing and put them on a garbage truck.
Right.
But it's hard to get a guy that you hired to drive a dump truck at the landfill 8:30 to 5, say we're going to pull you off, and now you got to go to work at 12 o'clock at midnight and get off at 11. I mean, that's a big jump in job duties and responsibilities. So that's not an easy switch.
Bobby, let me ask this. Is there any private contractors we could go and say, okay, we're going to sub out Stumpy Point, Collington, Hatteras?
The answer is, one of the options could be to do it with a private contractor and at whatever level you want. You could do it anywhere from 100% and we get out of it altogether. You could just do Stumpy Point. You could just do Hatteras Island. You could do some combination of the two. You could, tell Kitty Hawk, we can't do you. You got to get a private hauler. We could do a lot of things along those lines. There are consequences of all that. Cost being the main one is that your cost for trash collection is likely to go up. When we looked, the last time we looked, whoever the haulers were can't do it as cheaply as we do it because we don't have to charge a profit, and so they do. And so it would cost more to do it that way, and you know, we've tried to avoid that as long as we can. The second thing is that once you contract it out, then you're out of the business, and so you're out forever because once you get rid of your people and get rid of your equipment, if they raise the price on you, there's no competition. You're at their mercy for what they charge you, and it costs you millions of dollars to get back in it, to buy all that equipment again and to get those people back on. So you can't easily change back to doing it yourself once you get out of it. And so we've always been reluctant to do it because we can't control our costs once you do that.
That's what I was thinking, maybe a piecemeal, but doing like, take 2-3 different areas.
So yes, that is something that we can talk about.
Let me think outside the box a minute.
Yeah. But whoever you do that to is going to absorb a cost greater than what they're paying now.
Broach the consolidation concept where we're not competing against the municipalities. We would probably cut down on the number that we would need if we had a possibility to consolidate the towns.
So that would be a collaborative and cooperative agreement with the towns, Mr. Chairman?
A lot like the essential
You call it
housing.
what you want. I'm just throwing the idea out there.
I think it's a
Kinda
good
like
one.
building houses.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like we tried that once before, didn't we, Mr. Chairman?
Pardon?
Seems like we tried that once before.
Yeah,
didn't
we did, and we got shot down big time. But this is,
Once again, it's a very logical and I think well-founded suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
Recent history has caused me to be a bit skeptical.
yes, I understand.
So
I understand.
I'll come
But I
back
think-
with
I
some of
think
those
we
options in February.
I think we could all potentially save if we were to do that. And we wouldn't compete salary-wise.
I guess the only other thing is, just for the sake of this discussion, the discussions with regard to consolidation of trash collection was, if you consolidate, you can't pick it all up on Monday, and you can't pick it all up on Friday, and so who gets the Wednesday pickup in the tourist season? And the towns can get theirs on Tuesday, on Monday and Friday, and we can get ours on Monday and Friday, but if we had to do them all, we couldn't do them all on Monday and Friday, and so the schedule got
For the other guy.
to be the sticking point or one of the sticking points, I think, in
Well, if you
in doing that.
consolidate it all, you're taking, you'd still have the same number of people, same number of trucks that we do now.
Then you hadn't
just in
saved any
different-
money.
Right now, I'm just looking at getting
Well-
trash picked up,
Right.
period.
Yeah, well,
You have a larger field of candidates to cover
Yeah.
trouble spots. You don't have jumping from one town
But
to the next.
if we're gonna pay the rate that Nags Head or Kill Devil Hills pays the trash truck drivers, then why don't we just pay our guys that and some of the problem
Yeah,
goes
until
away?
next month when Southern
Yeah,
Shores
well,
raised it another.
that's fine until next 6
Well,
months from now when they raise it again.
That's my point. Yeah. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, County Manager. Ms. Hester, do you have anything for us today?
I don't.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Clausen, you have anything else for us?
No, sir.
All right, that brings us to County Commissioner's business. I will ask Commissioner Bassnight if she doesn't mind kicking it off today.
I'll be glad to. Thank you. I wanted to start with the Board of Education. Chairman Woodard and I attended the last meeting, and I want to give my congratulations to the new chairman, David Twitty, and Vice Chairman Carl Woody. I'm going to make it short. I won't put everything that was on my list. I did attend the Town of Manio Healthcare Task Force in December, and it was interesting. A plan was presented to bring a preceptor hub to Dare County, and these hubs would accept up to 15 students to learn healthcare practices from the preceptors who would oversee and coordinate their clinical training. An application would be submitted, and the hub could be awarded to a lead entity such as Dare County Health. Joe Rockenstein of the Manio Community Health Center reported that the health center in Manio had 842 visits between July and October of last year. And as of December 12th, but they have no primary physician right now. An offer has been made, but right now they do not have a physician on site. They are sharing a physician who comes from Englehart. They are looking to expand. I guess they've already outgrown their space. They need more space. They want space for 4 to 6 providers, and hopefully get a space that's about 6,000 square feet. And by everyone who spoke there, the need for mental health service was highlighted as a true need in Dare County. And I will also end by wishing everyone a happy and healthy 2024. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. On the theory of education, I saw a recent story in the news that prompted my attention. It was a report that the Washington, D.C. public schools were having a absenteeism problem, and that remarkably 24%, and they used the 9th grade as the sample grade, 24% of the 9th grade students in the Washington, D.C. district had 20 or more unexcused absences in the prior school year. I thought that was alarming. So I did what I thought I should do, and I contacted Superintendent Bassnight and said, Superintendent, can you give me this comparable statistics for Dare County schools? And he did. I'm very happy to report that they are tracked by school, and that for First Flight, the comparable number was 0.5%, not 24. And at Manteo, it was 2.8%, and for the district overall, 1.4%. So I think, again, just as a benchmark indicator, our school system is doing very, very well. Our attention and consideration of our students is very high, and I compare that to the highly populated, densely populated Washington, D.C. area, and sorry, guys, my heart breaks for the kids. It's almost like they have no chance. The second thing I just wanted to bring up, which caught my attention in the financial report from our director, our cost per helicopter ride is I'm working here, Dave, $22,000 per ride. Now, for that kind of money, we could get 3 seats and a possible door as part of our new early college construction build over at the Twyford building. I make fun, but the actual cost is a staggering $22,000 per trip, which, wow, got my attention. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
That's a trip you don't want to make,
No, sir, you do not.
and that's not in respects to cost.
I agree.
Commissioner House. Thank you, Commissioner Ross.
Thank you. The North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries, the Northern Regional Advisory Committee, will be meeting here in this room at January 9th at 5 o'clock. I definitely plan on being here and voicing a few opinions. And just wanted to put that out there. We do not have a pet of the week because we had a short week with Christmas and all that. And from what I understand over at SPCA, all the animals had a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year, and they didn't want to have to spend time with TV cameras and the paparazzi and all that. So they had a wonderful time. But like I said, if you please, if you're looking for a pet, please go down to the SPCA, take a look at what they have, and give one of their babies a forever home. And our day in history. 1967, Ronald Reagan was first sworn in as his first term as governor of California. A lot of things happened under his term as governor. One of the most important things, at least in my life, that I think of is he signed the Emergency Care Act, which started the paramedic program as we know it today. And without his signature, it would be years behind. So with that, I wish everybody a happy new year, and let's be safe, and let's be prosperous, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner House. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Allison Woodard for her 15 years of service to Dare County. Just looking at Allison, she must have started when she was 10. And aside from that, I'd like to wish everyone a safe and happy new year. Good to see everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Bateman.
Yes, sir. And I know Chairman Wood was going to bring this up, but I just wanted to address Tim White's passing. Super nice guy. I remember the first time I met Tim, he was working at this, selling sporting goods at the Old Buck Seafood. Remember the Old Buck Seafood place in downtown Manio?
I remember Buck.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was a trip. But I used to go in that office and we used to buy baseballs because I was involved in Babe Ruth and along with Bobby and everybody else, you know. But he was just a guy, nice guy to talk to. And the biggest tribute this morning when I got a text from George Barr, he said that this guy, although he was in pain, he was beating himself up every day and the disease was getting him. He still showed up with a smile and he was still at all the meetings and all the stuff. And you just can't, they don't build them like that anymore. They really don't. So anyway, we're going to miss him and I just wanted to address that. I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I had to say something about him.
No, I'm glad you did, Commissioner Bateman. Tim, talk about rebounding. I mean, how many times did he rebound from this? It was incredible. And you're exactly right. Never, ever in my dealings in the last 12 years on this board did he not show up with a smile on his face and always positive and always doing whatever he could to help our kids in that rec department. He will be sorely missed. But thank you for sharing that. Mr. Couch?
Yes, sir. Same thing with me. I mean, Tim, he is upbeat. I love being, when I was on Parks and Rec board, and then, of course, with the Fessenden down there, I've been on that board since the get-go. He always wanted to be a solution finder. He was fiercely loyal to his employees and his staff. And, when you've got that kind of talent in sports, I mean, the guy played ball for Pete Maravich's dad was one of his ball coaches.
What part of the country did he grow up and play ball in? It's called Western Pennsylvania, Commissioner Couch.
Well,
I grew up in the same neighborhood.
Absolutely. But, he just was, his kids, with all the demands that were placed on that guy, the more you do, the harder your phone rings. But he did sacrifice his family. I mean, he was good to his kids, and it hurts. But that's really all I've got. It's a busy time down in Hatters. I had a really good Christmas. The demands of this job really take away from my time with family, but I was able to make a rebound and no harm, no foul. So my kids are a lot happier with me. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. That brings us to the close of our meeting, the first meeting of the year, 2024. And I think I mentioned this earlier in my chairman's comments, I want to wish everyone a very, very happy new year. And I hope 2024 is the very best for each and every one of you. So with that being said, we need to adjourn and motion to adjourn until February the 5th.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner House. It's been seconded by Commissioner Ross. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.